Hi, this is Charles Hoskinson broadcasting live from warm, sunny Colorado. Always warm, always sunny, sometimes Colorado. I am here in my lovely home office. It is Sunday, August 31st, 2025. I'm back from Monroe. A lot of stuff to talk about, a lot of stuff we're doing. We're in the middle of everything right now. It's kind of the calm before the storm. So, as you know, first and foremost, we are doing the Glacier Drop. And what's really cool about the Glacier Drop is I get updates twice a day on the dashboard. We so far had 89,575 claims and total of 1.764 billion night, about 7.35% of the supply, which is exactly where we'd want to be. It fits a lot of the models and projections we have. What's really cool is only 57.8% is from Cardano. The second largest is Bitcoin at 22.4%, followed by Ethereum at 9.15%. XRP Nation, you guys are doing great. You are at 6.1%, and all other networks are about 4.46. And there's going to be a big surge of redemptions on the tail, especially as new modalities come open. I think all the ledger issues have been resolved, and the Trezor, I'm asking about whether people can do that or not. But all things considered, for having 35 days left, we're doing pretty good. Yeah, we're doing pretty good. The second stage is the scavenger hunt, and basically you mine some of the unredeemed stuff. And then you have the remorseful redemptions, meaning that you can still redeem after the network launches, but you get a lot less. So you actually have 3 different waves of redemptions that come online. So really, really happy about all those things. Another thing, Joel Teltner just tweeted out something, and I'll show you guys not too long ago. Let's see here. Let me go ahead and share my screen. Wow. Okay. And he said, please see the link. As stated, Input Output Group has commissioned a comprehensive investigative report, forensic audit of the ADA voucher program, including the pre-launch vouchers, Cardano blockchain upgrades, and the use of ADA associated with unredeemed vaulters. The resultant investigation report and forensic audit will provide a comprehensive, transparent account of facts with findings and methodology documented in detail. The investigative report and forensic audit will be released soon and published here in its entirety. And here is the website. So currently a splash page. Some of the final details are coming in. So put up software so you guys get to see a whole bunch of cool things, like how the vouchers were built using the AVVM. The software and demos for that will be made available. The compliance application, the original Cardano Foundation audit reports that were made in the 4 tranches, the Bitcoin addresses that were used to reconcile the 108,000 Bitcoin that was raised, as well as all the work of the auditors and the law firm that is slated for public release. Very big data dump. It's taken an enormous amount of time to get here. It was a humongous amount of work. They went through terabytes and terabytes of data and records, interviewed lots of people, and went through financial records. So that's coming soon. We thought it was going to be about mid-August, but it takes a little while to coordinate everything. But there's a website now to release all that. I'll go ahead and put the link here for you guys. And what I'll do when that drops is I'll do a live stream of the actual report and artifacts. And I don't care if it takes a really long time, probably be the longest live stream I ever did, read the whole thing with you so we can all read it together. So that's coming soon. Hope you guys like it. Hope you guys enjoy it. I know you've been asking for it. All right, let's see what else we got. Another big news item drop while I was away. I should just go away more often. A lot more gets done, apparently. So we've had major progress with our good friend Ouroboros Laos. So Laos is a very complicated protocol. There's a lot of moving pieces to it. There's a lot of complexity to it. And so we have had our prototyping group beat their head against the wall for the last 7 months, basically figuring out how to compress down Laos into a path of implementation, meaning get something to market in a reasonable period of time that massively improves the state of affairs and also has the ability to have a series of upgrades thereafter that continue to massively improve the state of affairs. Okay. So let me show you a little something. We have written a SIP, and now the SIP is for open review. And I'm going to show you the TLDR of the SIP. I think this is the most important part of it. This is the business part. There's a lot of technical goodies there, and I'll include a link for you guys. But basically, the throughput increases if Laos is implemented 30 to 65x. That's pretty good for the first step. The latency only increases from 20 seconds to about 40 to 60 seconds for transaction inclusion. There's always trade-offs in these things, and it explains the whole stuff, but there's a whole bunch of things you can do to mitigate that using Hydra and other stuff, and also co-developing future versions of Paris with Laos. We can actually move to a fast finality system. The infrastructure only requires modest hardware upgrades, 4 core machines, which means that Raspberry Pis can run it, and cryptographic key registration. Okay, and then time to market's about 1 to 1.5 years versus 2.5 to 3. We're working as hard as we can to figure out how to make that number go down. So we have to follow what's called a follow the sun model to do that, meaning development occurs 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. The other thing is it has to be co-developed with all the people building clients now, which is why we wanted Laos to be a little bit simplified over the full implementation, or else nothing would ever get done because it's too hard for everybody to pull that together. It's an extensive SIP, massive amounts of information. It's the culmination of 7 months of prototyping and work. It's got acceptance criteria and a whole bunch of stuff inside of it. So highly recommend you guys read it. It has yet to be approved as an official SIP because it's open for review. We have kind of a path to achieve. So here are all the acceptance criteria and implementation plan. And there's also versioning and all the primary references and so forth. So basically, this is the heart and soul of a long arc scaling agenda, because with all of this stuff, we can keep adding more scalability. And we're very convinced that Laos program, as it evolves over time, will basically keep the Cardano network relevant forever. The goal is to get a 1 - delta protocol where you're no longer consensus constrained, but rather you're network constrained. And then you can do all kinds of things, speed up your network stack. So an enormous amount of work has to be done to implement this, but big part was figuring out how to build it, how to simplify it, and to get it into a SIP. Next, we need our partners like TX Pipe, for example, and we need Blink Labs and all these others to read through it, comment on it. They already have been engaged. They're already starting to talk about it. And then the hope is to get to a final SIP, and then we can get it on the official implementation agenda. And this one's going to be a little different because we already have started provisioning for Follow the Sun. So instead of just writing code whenever it's done, we basically want to write code on the weekends. We want to write code on the weekdays, and we want to write code during the night. We want to write code during the day. The other thing is that we want to use artificial intelligence to help with the handoffs. So in Lace team, they've been experimenting with AI enhancement to the coding, and they've had great success there, being able to massively improve developer velocity and also code quality. So we're going to roll out a lot of AI enhancements as well and augment the development team. So when they do the handoff from one team to the next team, so you're following the sun, context shifts with them, and we have rigid quality control that moves its way through. So it's a new way of doing things. It never has been done before in the history of Cardano. We've never moved this fast in the history of Cardano. But what's nice is that Laos kind of knows how to plug into the rest of the ecosystem. It knows how to plug into our goals with Paris for fast finality. It knows how to plug into fee markets. It knows how to plug into Chronos, which will come later for timekeeping. It knows how to plug into the partner chains ecosystem. It knows how to plug into Hydra. It's a drop-in system with Praus. And when Laos fails, it fails back to Praus. So Praus becomes the emergency mode of the network, and Laos becomes the operating mode of the network. And what's really cool is that as it gets implemented, it'll force a test suite between all of the different nodes to ensure that Amaru and the Haskell node and the Go node are all interoperable with each other. So this is the hardest thing we've ever done as an ecosystem, but it puts us in a really good position. And frankly speaking, it's that first and most significant step towards unlimited scale with Cardano. And what's nice is we didn't have to change UTXO. We didn't have to change any of the fundamental assumptions of the system. For the most part, all intents and purposes, transaction determinism is preserved. And it fits into all the things that people are building, and it'll just fork like we've always forked. So very proud of the team for this, and an enormous amount of work to get there. We had to write the paper. We had to figure out the whole long-term agenda. And what's cool is it's future-proofed. So right after we finish, the first implementation, the prototype team will already have the next upgrade ready to go for 2027, 2028 time horizon, which contains substantial enhancements as well. Our network stack is getting a little long in the tooth. The mini protocol design is elegant, but it needs some more flexibility. So there's going to be some overhauls in that direction when we start bringing in kind of a universal pub sub network as well. And there's a lot of other things like an event brokering system, data availability system. And, we're kind of building our way up the stack with principles. So overall, very, very happy about the things that have been pushed through and the things that have been done. And, we're getting there. So those are some of the big ticket updates. Now, many of you would want to know about my time at the Monroe Institute. Okay, so what is the Monroe Institute? What the heck is this all about? So Bob Monroe, and there's a lovely book here that I got to read. Just bought it at the gift shop. Yeah, there we go. If it's inverted, it says The Journey of Robert Monroe from Out-of-Body Explorer to Consciousness Pioneer, forward by Charles Tart, written by Ronald Russell. Okay, so Bob, 1958, set up the Monroe Institute out in Virginia. And its claim to fame is that in the 50s and 60s, the Soviet Union decided to start a psychic program. And they basically were really interested in paranormal and psychics, obviously for weaponization, for strategic advancements. And the CIA started getting documents from spies that they had embedded in Russia that this program existed. So the Pentagon freaked out and they said, well, we need a psychic program too. So in 1972, what they did is they went to SRI, Stanford Research Institute. It's an institute at Stanford University. And they said, hey, let's do some research into remote viewing. So that was done by Russell Targ and some of his other friends. So anyway, they did a bunch of research and they said there's a there. This is incredible stuff. And so the military is like, well, you need to internalize it then. So they got 6 volunteers. In military language, that means they picked 6 people. And they sent them to SRI to get trained. And then they went back to Fort Meade and actually ran a program called Project Stargate. And that ran from 1972 to 1995. And the purpose of Stargate was to do remote viewing. And so basically, to be able to see through space and time things on the other side of the planet, events in the past and in the future. Sounds trippy and crazy. Well, anyway, they've had amazing results. And probably the biggest intelligence win that's public is the Typhoon submarine. So there was this giant building the Soviets were constructing, and nobody knew what was inside of it or what its purpose was. It was far away from the sea, about 5,000 feet away from the ocean. So the people are guessing that maybe they built tanks or something. Who knows? The remote viewers looked in and they realized that despite the fact that it wasn't adjacent to the water, they were building a giant submarine inside of it. And then 5 months later, the Soviets cut a channel and actually launched the Typhoon sub. One of the best remote viewers in that program was a gentleman named Joe McGonigal. And Joe's about 80. And Joe was remote viewer number 1 in the Stargate program in 1972. So I learned about Joe when I was on the Sean Ryan show, and I had breakfast with Sean, and I said, who's the longest interview you did? He said, oh, it got to be Joe, I think, like 6.5 hours. And we talked a little bit about Stargate remote viewing, all this other stuff. And I said, all right, well, I'll keep an open mind, about these things. So I tell you what, I'll go to the Monroe Institute because Joe still teaches there. After the CIA shut down the program in 1995, they went ahead and all those refugees went to the Monroe Institute, started teaching remote viewing there. And Joe turns out still there, a little old, and can be grouchy at times, but it was a great experience. A lot of wonderful people were there, and I had a tremendous amount of fun. Okay, so how's it work? Well, I got something to show you guys. It's show and tell time. So basically, you clear your mind and you relax. You're given a target. So they say target 50, target B17, target whatever, no other information. And then you kind of open your mind. And because Monroe was a big guy in binaural beats, you listen to some tracks that help synchronize your brain in the right state. And then you start getting some impressions within a few minutes of what the target looks like. And we call that a gestalt. And so those impressions are shapes, vague outlines, shadows, things like that. So you start drawing those, And then eventually you start getting some sensory information like colors, taste, hearing, touch, textures, these types of things. And then if you go on long enough, eventually it starts filling in spatial information and it starts filling in dimensional information. Okay. You're describing a target. You're not drawing a perfect picture of the target. It takes a long time to extrapolate a perfect picture from that. So the final test that they had, because we did a lot of remote viewings, and you go and they give you a target, you write it down, then they give you an envelope later and you open it up and see what you got. They said, it's your special target. I said, all right, so let me show you what I drew. I think this is one of the coolest things. Okay. So they said, Charles, here's your remote view, your special target. So you put it down on paper, you put the date and time, and then when you're done, EOS stands for end of session, not the cryptocurrency. And basically, you just draw your impressions. So the Gestalt started here, where I drew this line here. And then I said, well, there's arches or something like that. And maybe there's pins or columns. And then I started getting some impressions like it's used for timekeeping. There's like a green glass or something like that. There's gears involved in here, some form of a counterweight. There's an alligator-like texture. And then there's like this little kind of rectangular housing. And then there's some sort of vibration. I'm hearing like a bell-like ring or something like that. So I drew all this down over about a 30-minute period. I put it on my clipboard, went to sleep. Tomorrow morning, they come in, they give us all the envelopes, and the envelopes are unlabeled. And they just start randomly passing them out. I said, well, wait a minute. I thought this was just for me. I said, no. And then after I got my envelope, they said, all right, randomly just pick somebody in the class and swap envelopes with them. They all have different pictures in them. So I said, all right. So I go over and just swap an envelope with somebody at random. And I now have an envelope. So there's no way that anybody can know what my target would be. And again, my only prompt, because there's thousands of pictures floating around, is just your special target. So you guys ready to see what the picture is? You ready? So if you look closely, there's an alligator-like texture there, ringing. Look at the structure. And then you look behind here, there's these arches. And then you have your green, right here is the arches. And then you have your green glass. Also, crack. Isn't that fucking wild? So why does it work? How does it work? Well, I asked that question because I'm a skeptical guy, and stuff like this shouldn't be possible. You have to completely reconstruct the metaphysics of the world and a lot of overhaul. So basically, three things have to be true for remote viewing to work. So if you do an a priori deduction, starting from a remote viewing, saying what would have to be true in the universe for that to be true. First off, the universe would have to be conscious. It means that the universe is panpsychic. So consciousness is not an emergent property of your brain cells, but rather a non-local property. So everything has some degree of consciousness. Second, you'd have to have what's called a universal holographic information field. Okay, it's universal, meaning it's everywhere. Holographic, meaning one part of it can reconstruct all the information. And information has to work differently. Instead of matter and energy producing information, information produces matter and energy. And it has to be passive in that it's unchanging. Thus, block time is real. So the past, the present, the future are all together inside this thing. But you have to be able to interact with it, which means your brain has to be a quantum computer. So there's something called the orchestrated reduction theory that Roger Penrose and others came up with. And there's a couple of pieces of this that are floating around, like Michael Levin's work in Xenobots. He's starting to realize something's there. And also studying birds and how they do navigation, there seems to be quantum effects that birds are using. They have a quantum compass. So, but that means you have to have a quantum oasis inside the brain. So an environment that protects the computing that's happening from decoherence as a result of vibrations and heat. That's a lot to buy. But apparently, Pentagon kept this program going for 23 years. So that's a long time, multiple administrations. You can kind of guess some kooky stuff. But for all that, it's interesting. And That's one hell of a picture. So for my part, I'm going to have an fMRI online here in a little bit. And I also have the Colonel helmet that I got from Brian Johnson. I'm going to take some of these epic remote viewers and we'll just go ahead and scan their brain while they're doing it. And we'll see if we can see any pattern between all of them, especially when there's successes, because there's all kinds of things you can do. There's 3 stages. There's a remote viewer, the monitor, and the analyst. And you can use it as a grading system. SRI developed the protocol so that they could publish papers that were statistically significant. And we'll see basically what we learn from all of that. Also very interested in enhancing states of consciousness to promote remote viewing. See if you can dial that up a little bit. Shock the brain with magnets or electricity, or you can shock the brain with light. You can use sound to induce certain things. It's pretty crazy what you can do with all of this stuff. Yep. But anyway, that's what I did for a week. It was a great experience. Monroe Institute's very relaxing. It was good to be there and just meditate every day. They had yoga in the mornings, although it was too early in the mornings if I didn't go. And it was up till like 1 o'clock in the morning every night, just feverishly reading everything I get my hands on for it. So this is my first foray into, remote viewing. And I learned a lot in the process. And boy, does that well go deep. In case you're curious, why don't you win the lottery with it, or why don't you trade with it? Glad you asked. There's actually something called associative remote viewing. So I did a little research study on that, and we went to our good friend Gemini, and I had it write up a report. And let me show you a little something here. I think you guys are going to be pretty excited about this one. So there's a way that you can decompose a future decision into a yes/no, and the associative remote viewing component basically gives you the ability to do that. And let me show you this. Let me grab the evidence part of the paper. Methodological critiques, financial market predictions. Yeah, here we go. Share screen. This was the JSON prompt that I used for it. JSON prompts are the best when you actually want to report generated. All right. The allure of using ARV to beat the market has motivated numerous projects since the early 1980s. Case studies provide most quantifiable data on the protocol's performance outside of purely research setting. So the 1982 Associates Silver Futures project by Targ and his co-author Hayari. This is perhaps the most well-known ARV application. In 1982, Targ and Keith formed a company, Delphi Associates, and used ARV to predict the direction of silver future markets. Over a series of 9 consecutive weekly predictions, they reported 9 correct forecasts, an outcome that led to a profit of approximately $120,000 in a front page article in the Wall Street Journal. And then they had replication failures, and then there was a school project that was done. Now, Greg here, he did some interesting stuff, that Polish bastard. This represents the most extensive longitudinal applied ARV by a single operator. Over 13 years, Greg conducted 5,677 ARV trials to predict market outcomes, acting as his own viewer, judge, and investor using a unique computer-based system. The overall hit rate for an individual trial is 52.65%, a modest but statistically significant result. By aggregating multiple trials per prediction and weighting them, his subjective constant score, the success rate reportedly increased by over 70%, yielding a total profit of $146,000. And then he tried to do it again with Project Firefly and failed there. So you can use it for sports betting too. So yeah, precognition. That Bell picture, the only way that would have been possible is precognition, meaning I had to see a future event, because nobody knew what the envelope was going to be. So how about that? It's crazy shit, right? That's what I do on my weekends. Do you go and do those things? All right. So AMA time. You've waited patiently. That was the update. Charles, looking great, man. Keep up with some weight loss. Sorry, somebody just interrupted me. Charles, looking great, man. Keep up with the weight loss. can you give us a teaser about some of the partnerships formed under Midnight Excite Us? Oh, there are a lot. There's some really big ones that we're percolating and cooking, and we're finding ways to kind of put them together. But overall, you can see them being announced basically on a weekly basis. Fahmy likes to drip, so he doesn't announce all of them at once, and you can see what the partnership is about. So when we do like blockchain.com or bitcoin.com, they're actively not only listing ADA and all Cardano native tokens support for their wallet interfaces, but then they're also actually helping with the Glacier drop. That's an active applied partnership. The kind of the infrastructure-wide partnerships, we're going through all the usual suspects. There's some hardball negotiation that's going on. It is kind of like walking into a broken town where prior leadership was just drunk and disengaged, and they didn't give a shit about anything, and having to fix the mess. We should have Layer 0. We should have Pyth. We should have Chainlink. This is not IO's fault. A lot of people go to X and they blame us. 600 million ADA was given the foundation to do stuff like that. I understand the leadership there feels that their purpose is to go make wine deals in Georgia or get the Dubai police to do something. But you know what? You live in an ecosystem and you're accountable to that ecosystem. What deals have you made with Solana? What deals have you made with AVAX? What deals have you made with people in the Bitcoin ecosystem? What integrations have you made? You say, well, we don't want to list CNTs because we don't want to pick sides. Great. Pay for the custodians to integrate CNTs so the exchanges can actually list Cardano assets. We had to do that. On the Midnight side, cost $23 million. 100% of that should have been paid by the CF. That's their job. That's who they are. It's not hard. It's not rocket science. We, in a year with the Midnight Foundation, put a deal team together and went and talked to everybody, negotiated with everybody. And they said, we thought you weren't interested. We thought Cardano was a dead chain. We looked at all the data from DeFi Llama and these other things. We didn't even realize anybody was still there. We tried to do deals with the foundation. They just basically didn't pick up the phone, or they would basically blow us off. And you know what? Guys, you own your record. Make a list of all the deals and integrations you've done in the Web3 space in the last 3 years. Make a list of the things that you've done to help CNTs. And no, not a tier 4 exchange doing $50,000 of volume. What have you done to bring Coinbase in? Copper is a requirement for that. You wouldn't pay for it. We did. That's a fact. That's a fact. So Midnight had to go and do all those things, and it continues to do those things, and they're expensive as hell. Some of these are 7 to 8 figure deals, multi-year deals. They're very expensive. And because Midnight lives on Cardano, because I know there's some of these sycophants that go and suck the CF cock because they want some money from them. And they say, oh, no, Midnight's a completely separate project. It has nothing to do with Cardano. Midnight lives on Cardano. The only way they can support Midnight is to support Cardano. Full stop. I'll repeat it. The only way they can support Midnight is to support Cardano. So if Midnight needs an integration, Cardano's getting that integration. To get Midnight on the blockchain.com wallet, first had to list ADA. That's simple. It's not rocket science. And it is completely outside of the mind of some of the people floating around because they choose not to acknowledge that. They don't want to acknowledge that this project has done a lot. And it is the most likely CNT to be listed on big exchanges, tier 1 exchanges, the most likely. And of course, we already read out the numbers, that huge airdrop, half were ADA, but the other half was not ADA. So all those people had to come into Cardano and become a Cardano user to do that. And we proved out an entire economic model. And now stake pool operators get 2 revenue streams instead of 1. And it increases the sustainability of staking inside the system. I'm just tired of it. I just really am. And, it's frustrating that we have to pay out of pocket. And we're under so much scrutiny for all the things. If you give money to the IO, guys, it doesn't go to the Charles Piggy Bank Fund and I go do crazy shit with it, like buy Lamborghinis and other things. Here's a news flash. Off of the 108,000 Bitcoin that came through the Cardano thing, it made me a made man. Okay, when it goes to IOG, what we do is we end up using it, either write code, build new products, do integrations. And where do those products live? They live on Cardano. which brings users and TVL and volume and adoption. It keeps the protocol alive and relevant. And you want to nickel and dime us every step of the way. So it is what it is. And for the most part, we've just moved on. Intersect is funded. The Treasury is working. The on-chain government is where it needs to be. We're moving on. Midnight is where it needs to be. The CF has nothing to do with Midnight. They couldn't even redeem their night. So they have no say in that ecosystem. And every future partner chain we build, it's going to be the exact same. And they'll die a slow heat death because they have no economic model. Now, ADA will continue to go up, so it'll give them a much longer runway. But they, by their structure, have no means to interface. Guys, you cannot have an organization where the board members have personal liability and expect them to do anything at all but go and plant flowers for war orphans. You have to take risks. You have to do deals where you can get sued, and there's fiduciary issues. You have to deploy capital. You have to take a chance on things, and you can't do that in a conservative structure. It's handcuffs. They need to move the organization. We tried to do that, and for the 7,000th time, when we tried to do that, the minority of the board tried to fire the majority of the board, created a conflict. Lawsuits came in. We won them. Swiss government stepped in. ISA basically said, we're putting an administrator in, and that administrator is going to give you two options. Either I can liquidate the entire board and put it into a receivership, or you guys can jointly pick some new board members to replace yourselves and all resign. So when they make a statement like, oh, well, the IO picked these board members, they leave out the other part that if we didn't do it, the entire foundation would have been shut down for 3 to 5 years while the Swiss government, on its own volition, Teresa decided to pick the board members. They leave that part out. See the lies and the lies and the lies? And there's no governance structure for you, the community, to pick the board members. Because here's the thing, it would be self-correcting. People would be disgruntled. Elections would happen. The prior board members would be fired. New board members would be brought in. Those new board members would, lo and behold, be aligned with the community's interest. That's what elections do. They clear out the dead weight. The majority of the board members of Intersect now, by the end of the year, all of them, all those majority of those members will be elected by the members. The entire constitutional committee, the new one coming in, is elected by you. It's accountable to you. The D-reps you picked. You don't like what they're doing. You don't like the decisions they're making. You fire them. You have a voice. You have a vote. That's the way it was supposed to be. It's not supposed to be, and I did not set that up, that an unelected Swiss board is forever in charge, does nothing because they have personal liability, and they can never be fired. And they pick their replacements, and you have no say in it. And they can then weaponize their ADA, and anybody who speaks out against them, they can either abstain or vote against their catalyst proposals or governance actions. So you have to be kind of nice. It's easy to do a few good vanity things when you're sitting on a pile of $600 million. Really is. It's a lot harder to be accountable to outcomes. I say Laos is going to ship. That's an outcome. We have a SIP. We had to go and figure out how to build it, and build it in an adversarial environment where there are competing nodes and they don't work for us. We can't order them to do things. So we have to negotiate with them and come to common grounds and get them to accept it and agree on a common plan for everybody. That's hard. And by the way, you want it in a year, and it's 60 times faster. And when we ship it, there's still going to be jackoffs that say it's not fast enough. So we have to have a plan to make it even faster. That's an outcome. Launching Midnight this year, that's an outcome. Airdrop, you get it. You redeem it. That's an outcome. Some people like it. Some people don't like it, but that's an outcome. There's accountability. There's falsifiability. There's predictability. When you say things like promote the brand, what's the falsifiability behind that? It's subjective. There's no outcome here. There's no objectivity to that. When you go and say things like, we have to build integrations to get our thing to talk to everybody, that's an outcome because you can list all the different organizations you have to work with and protocols. You have to look at Wormhole. You have to look at Layer Zero. And I'm sorry that these words are harsh, especially to the rank and file at the CF, but understand the organization you work for has no courage. They just don't. The reason why Marcus went did the stupidest thing he could ever do and tongue-in-cheek said the Ada Redemption stuff is because he's angry that I yelled at him in December at the Cardano Constitutional Convention. Because he came up to me, basically tried to explain a tweet where the CF said they can't support the Constitution. And by the way, they tried to derail that convention by launching their own constitution a week before, and then while at the convention, tweeting that they're not going to support it. Same for Intersect. Can't support Intersect. We're with you. Well, no, we're not going to join the board, but we'll join as a member, and then we'll go and create a competing MBO whose sole purpose is to build other clients. None of you asked for that. You said we want Cardano to be faster. We want our TVL to grow up. We want our DApp ecosystem to be stronger. We want more transactions on chain. We want Cardano to adopt modern things like event brokering and data availability and composability. These are things you're asking for. Did you say, no, we should spend tens of millions of dollars trying to get rid of IO's developers and replace them with other developers? Why was there a delay in the Leo SIP? The person who was in charge of writing that SIP was hired by the CF to go build their competing client. So we had to find a different person to lead that program. That's what I've dealt with for 3 years. And you guys have the balls to go to Twitter and say, well, why don't you just hire a mediator and just try to get along? It's not possible because they're a captured organization accountable to no one with no oversight and the ability at any time to derail people. And after the convention, I said, we're just going to change the strategy. We're going to have full transparency. We're going to open the kimono. We're going to show you all the things that they were supposed to do with Ada Redemption they didn't do. We're going to talk about how the original intent was supposed to be in a members-based organization. And again, accountable to an outcome. Cardano needed one. We built Intersect. They did everything in their power to kill it, delegitimize it, damage its brand. But you know what? Still here, like Johnny Live a Lot. Because again, we want an outcome. We want Cardano to win. What incentive do I have to destroy Cardano and make it go down in flames? What incentive? I created it. I'm the founder of it. The rest of my life, brand and reputation is tied to the success or failure of this thing. You think for one damn minute that I want Ethereum to be above Cardano? No, I want it to win. Every day I wake up and I say, what can we do to enhance the state of affairs? I also have to have shared experiences with you guys. One of the reasons why IO was tone deaf was that we weren't connected to the DevX. We didn't have products like smart contracts in the ecosystem. We wrote the languages, but we never ended up using the tools. What are we doing with the Glacier Drop? What are we doing with the Glacier Drop? It's got Hydra at its core. It uses Cardano smart contracts, so we have to write Cardano smart contracts. And Midnight is a Cardano native token at the end of the day, which means I have the same lived experience and frustrations as you, the builders. And you know what? If we can't get it done, well, sure as hell you can't. So we got to go fix that. That's why we're building products. The same with Lace. The construction of Lace meant we had the same lived experience as all you guys trying to build mobile wallets and browser wallets and trying to pull Cardano into the browser, make Cardano work in WebAssembly. Now we had to fix a lot of broken windows along the way. That's why we do these things. It helps us align ourselves with you. Are we accountable to an outcome? Yeah, it's called adoption. Do you think I want Lace to have no users? I want Lace to have 5 million users. And if we have 5 million users, what does that mean? The majority are Cardano users. It brings people in. None of these are destructive. You'll notice the Lace strategy is an outbound strategy. It's getting users from Solana. It's getting users from XRP. XRP support's just about to turn on. It's getting users from Bitcoin. We also salvaged things like the Nami team left. They were leaving the ecosystem. They just love Radix. So what do? We bought Nami and integrated it in, tried to create a Nami mode for it. You like it, you hate it. We at least tried to salvage that so those users didn't go away. When you build competing clients, it's a sum-zero game. Doesn't add people in. Takes users from one side of the bathtub into another side of the bathtub. Doesn't do anything for the ecosystem at all. except for some resilience and diversity. But why don't we just have resilience and diversity with technical steering committees and product committees? Oh, that's right. Because not fuck Charles Hoskinson. The good news is that we are succeeding. We're moving forward. We're firing on every single dimension. We have Laos working, Hydra's coming along well. The vending machine demo was just magical. We continue to build up that tech stack. We're already working on Plutus V4. There's a lot of goodies coming there. Starstream is funded. Midgard is funded. We got the partner chains team really well put together. The Bitcoin DeFi team is going to be 19 people under Omar, and we're building that up for new user acquisition. And we're strengthening our relationships with XRP. I was just with Brad Garlinghouse at SALT. We served on a panel together when we were roundtable when we were talking with the Federal Reserve together. There's a lot there, and there's good days that come, and we're working our asses off to try to keep up with it. It's getting harder because the competition's getting harder, and it's frustrating to me because obvious things to do, like integrations with other ecosystems, the absence of those integrations mean we get left behind. Like the Department of Commerce pushing economic data, they weren't picking blockchains because they really love one blockchain over the other. They were using Chainlink and Pyth. If you don't support that technology, you can't push on. So I put JJ on Chainlink. I said, fuck it. And they gave us an absurd number for integration. We'll haggle it. We'll figure it out. They're good negotiators. Sergey is an extremely smart man, and he's a very good businessman, and he kind of sees the future, and he knows he's sitting on a golden egg, and he knows what he's worth. And I like people like that. There's honesty in those conversations. So it's tough, and it's a tough negotiation. You can't have lightweights in the room because you need killers. You need strong people, and you need to show the value, and you need to make the case why a non-EVM chain makes sense for them. They have 9 contracts that have to be written and integrated. And these things take years to build if it's non-EVM. So we have to figure out a path to make that work well and make that work quickly. It's not going to be easy, and it's a very complicated negotiation, but it should have been had 3 years ago. Did we drop the ball? Yeah, the commercial team that I had didn't work out for us. We let them go. It's more than 100 people we let go in 2022. That's why there's a few disgruntled people floating around. We made peace with some of them, and they went on and created Apex Fusion, and they're doing their thing. Other ones we never did, and they certainly burnt the house down on the way out. It is what it is. You move on. But that's the past. And you look to the future and you say, there's an outcome we need. We need an Oracle for Midnight and Cardano. Let's go get one. And let's negotiate hard and find a path to do it and get it in. And I don't care what we have to do to get it done. That's the attitude you have to win. That's the mindset you have to get it done, to push it forward. If you don't have that urgency, you don't have that desire. And why would they at the CF? They don't have any upside. Whether they do a great job or bad job, they get paid the same. There's no outcome-oriented compensation. I have an equity fund for my employees at IO. They get an upside if our products work. They don't get that upside if they don't. So they kind of want it to happen. They kind of want to make it happen. It's pretty simple. Incentives get you everywhere. Again, that structure does not allow them to pay incentives. Another reason to leave and go somewhere else, like Abu Dhabi, where the literal government tried to negotiate with me to negotiate the CF to get them to move to become a DLT foundation at the ADGM. And say, you can do anything. We'll change the law. Come on over. We want you here. No. Switzerland is the only place to be where we have personal liability. We can't offer proper incentives to people and outcomes to people. It's a shame, too, because there are some good people there. And what they've decided to make that organization is the I Hate Charles Hoskinson Support Club. And you can come here if you're disgruntled against something that happened to you at IO at some level, whether it's my level or a level lower. And you can all sit around every day and just talk about how Cardano would be better if Charles got killed in a plane accident. And we can all finally move on from this evil terror. And now we have the Kraju people trying to make some money off of Kraju. So Kraju, the story behind Kraju, and Kraju's in the main office, not my home office. is that I was at the Gaiju Con, the Godzilla festival called G Fest over in Chicago with my brother. And an independent artist from Louisiana created a kaiju called Kraju. And that statue is actually the son of Kraju. And I thought it was real cute, so I bought it. And it's starting to become a character and it be anthropomorphized in its own right. But it's one of those cosmic horror, H.P. Lovecraft meets Godzilla ethos, kaiju universe monsters. And it has all the things you would expect in a Lovecraft, like cultists who have bad outcomes for worshiping Kraju. And Kraju is very well made. Really beautiful statue, and good printing quality for it. Hey, Charles, you think there's a way to persuade Coinbase to give its users their midnight token Glacier drop for Cardano? I hope they do. I think even Scaramucci called, said, hey, where's my night, man? So we're working on that. Will midnight's 60-day window be extended if Trezor does not get their act together? No. Please advise Deadless users to create a Lace wallet with their seed phrase or claims won't work. Yeah, just go ahead and restore your Deadless wallet in Lace and use the redemption app. Daedalus is being deprecated. What's going to happen is it's going to turn over to some community company. And a lot of people have asked for it, and we're kind of in discussions about what to do with it. But the whole thing is long in the tooth. It's built on Electron. It's very old technology. And we have a different strategy for how to do a full node. And that's being rolled out as a unified node architecture for Lace. So we have one common interface, one common code base, and it builds to a full node, builds to a mobile client, builds to a browser. It's called Lace 2.0. And we're working towards it tentatively November for that to come out. But then what you can do is install a full node that can connect to a browser wallet. And that node, the BlockFrost guys are putting together, that's a Mithril node. So it does fast sync. In the lab, we're getting a full node sync in less than an hour with it, which is really, really cool. I'm really surprised that Balaji does not use Cardano's example of a network state. It needs to be brought to his attention. And this is the thing. It's like when you have effective governance organizations, they look at the key leaders, they profile them, and then they engage them. So if we've done something remarkable with a network state, you take Balaji out and you basically give them the full tour. I tried to bring as many people as I could to Cardano Constitutional Convention, but there's a lot we could do to engage these people. I'm not going to go criticize Balaji. I'm Facebook friends with Balaji. He's a good guy. It's just he's not in our ecosystem. He's in the Ethereum ecosystem. He's in Silicon Valley. We have zero representation there. Zero. We need some representation. If we did, people would actually write about us. That's why they think it's a dead chain, because nobody talks about it, and the DeFi Llama stuff looks terrible. So they just assume that it was abandoned long ago. And we can fix it. We have the tools. We have the technology. So did you try any binaural beats on your visit to the Monroe Institute? Yeah. They had the Monroe 12, 15, and 21. It's some cool stuff. I also know the guys at Brain FM who study this type of stuff. Overall, it's really interesting technology. You talked about bull markets in the past. Usually you don't do that. How so? Different administrations, different perception of things. Clarity is going to get passed and all these other things. The world is different now. Crypto can come out of the closet. Being a crypto person was kind of like being gay in the 50s, in a sensitive role. You had to hide it, and secret parties and things like that. It's like, hey, are you into Bitcoin? Are you Bitcoin curious? You hope you don't get caught with your Bitcoin. And now you can come out of the closet. You can be yourself. Did you meet up with Mickey at Rare Evo? I did. I did meet with Mickey at Rare Evo. We had breakfast together. I ate some crepes. It was a good meeting. We talk and talk and talk, and we'll see what we can do. Still would like to roll out Earth Node over in Gillette, and I've been very clear about the things I'd like to do. It's a relationship. Is the UTXO model the only barrier to link Oracle? No, they have very rigorous engineering behind their 9 smart contracts, and the contracts are not one-to-one portable to Cardano because of the language and the model. But there's a lot of ways that we can build bridges or other things like that. It's just there needs to be a dedicated integration team, and we need to take a look at what they have, and then we can scope out. And what we could do is a rolling integration, so the product can gradually turn on in layers like Laos does. It's just there needs to be people on it. And that's the problem. There's never been people on it, and it keeps dying on the altar. Will there be a new snapshot for the scavenger mine? I don't think you understand what the scavenger mine means. The scavenger mine scavenges all the stuff not redeemed from this snapshot. Come on, man. Stick with it. This is a painting from Jean-Léon Gérôme, and it's about a gladiator who's fighting another gladiator. You look 70-year-old grandpa. Thought I was starting to look a little better. Does the midnight airdrop now work with Ledger? Yes. Go ahead and give it a shot. Charles, I was in Gillette the past week for work. What's the story behind the faux metal palm trees at the clinic? I had to chuckle when I saw this. Palms in Wyoming are mutually exclusive. So you get about 3 months of good weather in Gillette, Wyoming, and the other 9 months are eh. And so it's really hard to landscape and actually have beautiful landscape unless you contain it or you spend a lot of time, effort, and money on it. And my family has a strong Hawaii connection. I love islands. My dad loves islands. He went to Baldwin High School and University of Hawaii School of Medicine. So we wanted palm trees, and you can't landscape them there. And so we decided that for the landscaping for the clinic, let's go ahead and do xeriscaping. So I was at NFR, National Finals Rodeo, Cowboy Christmas. It's just like where they sell all the goodies, the Western stuff for NFR. And I saw this booth, and they were selling steel plants, and they had cactuses and palm trees and other things. And I said, "Can you guys do a custom commission and give us a bunch of these metal plants?" And they said, "Sure." And we got them. We put lights in them, and they look really beautiful. And you're absolutely right to say that Wyoming palms are mutually exclusive. But frankly speaking, everything we've done with the clinic is mutually exclusive to Wyoming. It's a little oasis. And if you go inside, I have a vivarium that has poison dart frogs and a sky rainforest inside of it. So it's about the only place in the entire state where you can get poison dart frogs. Do you still support OG projects and Cardano like Sunday and Muesli Swap and MinSwap? Oh, absolutely. Sunday we work with every single day. Pi is one of our closest relationships. MinSwap, I'm going to see those guys when I'm in Vietnam. And Muesli, I think, is in Switzerland. And I do run into them when I'm in Europe. So we talk to them. We work with them. Is there a reason you prefer Agda over Coq for formal specifications of Cardano nodes written in Rust and other languages? Agda is kind of a natural extension of the formalisms that Haskell was trying to do. In fact, there's a huge overlap between the guys who do Haskell research and the people that do Agda research. And cubical type theory, there's some good advantages when you're doing code extraction that we like. Now, Coq is a great language, but its sister language is OCaml. So if you're OCaml people, you're Coq people. They're very French. And if you're Haskell people, you're Agda people. So this is the 100-year war in the PL world. But we also are very deep into Lean as well. In fact, the Hoskinson Center for Formal Mathematics is based on Lean, which is another dependently typed language. Is it true that IOG has 10% of the world mobile token, or is this false? No, we do not. We're supposed to have a percentage of the company. It's never been issued to us. Every time I meet with Mickey, it's dangled, but it's never been issued. It's one of those frustrations in the relationship. Question: what's the next episode of Chaz and it's not Pepper, it's Chaz and Ginger Snaps? That was shot actually at Rare Evo, and it'll be posted on the IO channel here a little bit. We had this lovely recording booth, and we shot tons of podcasts while we were there. EEG headset plus remote viewing, proof of view. This is Trim, by the way. He's product manager running Quantum Hosky. Why can't you break up with CF? Because they still live in my house. Typically, when you have a divorce, like somebody leaves the house and takes the kids. You don't stay with the person and see them every day, and they still have an opinion on the things you do, and they can veto your budget and other stuff like that. If they moved and did something else and changed their name, it's like we'd never talk about them again, right? It's pretty common sense, man. Oh, Lord. Sometimes I think people don't think it through. The epistemological hygiene is the epistemic hygiene is lacking at times. When USD1 on Cardano, we did talk to the Witkoffs about it. I think JJ can land that deal. He's talking with them. We got to figure out a time and place, but it's a whole bundle. I'd like USD1. I'd like Aave. I'd like Chainlink. There's a bundle there, and we're kind of working our way through what that means and how to do it. But they want to do a private stablecoin. It's a huge competitive advantage. Tether's pursuing it. USDC is looking into it. You gotta get that next level going. Privacy enhancing technologies, and they're great principles there. We have to just kind of figure it out. The problem with JJ is he's bandwidth constrained. He only has a few people on his commercial team. We're scaling up as fast as we can, but his deal negotiation flow is quite limited. And the Argentine office was a huge set. And he's been assisting with the Midnight Deal team, which is Ian and these other guys at the Midnight Foundation. And they're a very good team, but they're also bandwidth constrained. We have a lot of people that want to do deal with us. this lie that everybody hates me and Cardano's evil and Charles is not respected by anybody. Well, then how did we make all these deals with Midnight? I don't know. Hate sex on the weekends. Question: Bison Valley release will be on Stuff.io or accessed only through Lace Wallet. It'll be accessed through Lace Wallet, and uses Charles token. I did not see your anti-aging question. Does it concern you that the CEO of Midnight Privacy Chain, first off, there's no CEO of the Midnight Privacy Chain. There's Midnight Project, but Midnight is a protocol. It's open, it's audited, and anybody can play around with it. So just first step of that. Is an X-Intelligence IDF? It's news to me. And how do you think it needs to be? I think you're referring to Iran Barak, and Iran was in the IDF because everybody who's born in Israel gets drafted into the IDF, and he worked on satellites, and he built satellites for the IDF. And then after he left, he went to America, and he ran Symphony, and later was chief operating officer over on the Polkadot side, and worked with Gavin and everybody else there. But he just runs the shielded side. And we work with a lot of Israelis. Nobody seemed to have a problem with me when I was working with Avi Loeb, who also was a part of the Israeli complex and got his PhD in astrophysics at, I think, 23 or 24, working with them, and now teaches at Harvard. But is that a problem? Does it mean the spherules we recovered are somehow contaminated or wrong because there's an Israeli connection? The Israelis are smart. They have a lot of money, and they're heavily integrated into cryptography, aerospace, and academia, and biotechnology, and medicine. Better get used to it. And there's a few of them in Hollywood, too. Any Bitcoin development happening at IOG Dandelion, for example? We've thought about building a Bitcoin node at some point. We'll probably end up doing that with Lace. We've also tried to put a lot of effort into improving the Bitcoin protocol. It's a lost cause. So Taproot's great. Let's just focus on that. Let the Bitcoin community figure out its roadmap, and we'll just accept it for what it is and build on top of it. Charles, do you know any context for stem cell therapies applied to veterinarian care? Just wondering, since your clinic is doing them, looking for ideas to help dogs and cats with CKD. Bob Harmon is the best guy in the world for that. He's based out in California. He's a vet, and he went into human medicine after doing animal stem cells for many years. He did the stem cells for Sheikh Mohammed's horses. This guy is as good as it gets. He also owns the patent and also got FDA approval on the veterinarian side for lyophilized PRP without a cryoprotectant. Pour water on it, the platelets come back to life. Guy's a goddamn mad scientist genius, and he's a very good man. And I spent a lovely time down there with Bob Harmon in San Diego, and learned a huge amount from his lab. And he's going to come up and visit us. But if you're doing anything involving stem cells in animals, he's the guy to talk to. Charles, does your wife have big tits? Not as big as your mom's. Charles, what do you think of Brian Johnson? I've been doing his blueprint stuff for 5 months now, and to be honest, I feel better than ever. So I met Brian years ago when we wanted to do a collaboration with Brian and with the Colonel, because he ran a company called, he still owns it, and it's called Colonel Flow, and it's an FNears headset, kind of looks like a bicycle helmet. You put it on, or let me one of those Spaceballs helmets from the Spaceballs movie. It has all these little comb sensors in it that actually shoot lights into your brain, and it can, through looking at blood flows, figure out cognition. And it's backed up with EEG as well. It's a 6-channel system, dry sensors. But overall, he's a great guy, very smart guy, a little strange. He's kind of a modern day vampire. And he decided to go hardcore into anti-aging. And he's one of those, I'll try it on me before I try it on anybody else. So it's kind of that biohacker, Dave Asprey, Tim Ferriss world, where there's these guys and they just inject themselves with strange things. And they say, hey, look, I've injected myself with strange stuff. Long and short, what does it work or not? And we all know the same people. I'm friends with Asprey, and he is too. And we all talk to each other. So there's like this elite billionaire biohacking club where we message each other and talk about various things. I don't think anything that he's pushing is particularly harmful. Obviously, none of it is FDA approved, and safety and efficacy data is not available. That said, the FDA is just a lost cause at this point, and it's damn near impossible to get them to say anything good about anything. Even just bioelectricity, they're just now saying, I guess maybe there's a thing there. Yeah, we've known about that for 70 fucking years, man. Every cell has a different voltage potential. So neurons are negative 70 millivolts, and then if you look at muscle cells, they're negative 90. Stem cells are 0. It's an electrical fingerprint that the cells have that's connected to the ion channels in the cells. And if you change that electrical fingerprint, you actually can change the cell. So you can get a cancer cell to turn into a normal cell, or a normal cell to turn into a cancer cell. It's pretty crazy what you can do with it. FDA didn't really talk about it for a really long time. And just now they're starting to realize that there's a there. Dr. Levin was the big guy. There's also a DARPA program called BER, the bioelectricity research or something. They use it for wound treatments, and it's having amazing results. Don't believe me? You can go to Amazon and buy bandages that have little batteries in them that create an electrical current, and they accelerate healing. So if you cut yourself, you can heal like twice as fast with electrical current. You can move cells with electricity too. It's called electrotaxis. So that's why you have biohackers, because the government's failed us and science has failed us, and all the large language models are starting to converge to Ned Flanders, and they can't disagree with mainstream medicine. So you got people like Brian, and it works 90% of half the time. And the places it works fabulously. It's phenomenal. And the places it doesn't work, for the most part, probably is not too harmful. The gene therapy down in Roatan with the plasmid that makes follistatin 344, that's a little aggressive. But I'm probably going to do that, so I get that muscle pig gene. So if it's working for you, Pat, keep it going. It's good stuff. Just don't take blood from your children and inject it into yourself. It's helping me grow my hair back. Well, that's pretty cool. I kind of need that. Losing my hair. Is Wi-Fi harmful to DNA? I'm sure there's somebody online that says that. I love these questions. It's whataboutism. What is the purpose of Emergo? I only see people bashing the CF. Well, Emergo is supposed to be the consensus of our ecosystem. Whether they succeeded or failed, that's up for you. But they're not supposed to go and do like integrations with Chainlink and Layer 0 or get Circle on or get Tether on. They were supposed to do commercialization in the ecosystem. We can have a 2-hour talk Monday morning quarterback of, what they've done wrong. It's just they don't get in the way. Emergo doesn't go and try to build competing clients or competing members-based organizations. Emergo doesn't go and try to derail all the things we do, or derail Midnight or whatever the hell it is, or poach our people. They don't do that. Maybe they're ineffective, but you can't argue that they're harmful. And that's why there's so much animus right now with the CF, because they're going out of their way to be harmful. Who in the billionaire club will be the first to inject themselves with mammoth semen? That's a sticky question. I don't want to take a prescription drug for hair loss, man. Now, this is actually an interesting question. I know a lot of porn stars because there was a huge overlap between pornography and the cryptocurrency space. And there's actually cryptocurrencies that were launched in the cryptocurrency space, like Spank Coin and other things, because porn got debanked and deplatformed. This was part of Operation Choke Point. It was going after porn, marijuana dispensaries, gun dealers, these types of things. And so a lot of porn people entered into our industry thinking that they could create their own payment systems to modest success. I always thought that that was going to be a much bigger industry and there was going to be a much bigger overlap for all that, especially with NFTs, because you can embed into the construction of the content fingerprints that give you the ability to understand provenance. Because one of the biggest problems in the pornography industry is intellectual property theft. A video will be made, it gets stolen and reposted, and the authors make no money out of that video. You also age verification is another low-hanging fruit. You'll notice that Pornhub, for example, they are now blacklisting people from Texas and I think Utah because they need to verify the users are over 18. So you can use zero-knowledge proofs to verify that you qualify without revealing who you are, because that's an area where you probably don't want to tell people that you are who you are. So I've met many, many, many people in that industry. Probably my favorite would be Jaden Cole. Also, the other was the digital twins. Reflect for a brief time. A lot of those people were coming over because they have a patent on the digital twin side, and they were asking about digital twins in the OnlyFans world. Good market. Most controversial conspiracy theory you believe in, that there's still good people in the government. There actually is a lovely meme that's floating around the cryptocurrency space for Joe Lubin from Ethereum. You know, these found a consensus. It's called Joe Lube, and they made Joe Lubin's backstory that he was a famous porn star. Can you link a paper wallet to things like titles, deeds? Did anyone hack your paper wallet for the 1 million? No one hacked it, and yes, you can. Yes, we can. Charles, what do you think about DARPA and their intentions? I love DARPA. It's a great organization. They were created in the 50s in response to the launch of Sputnik. And what they were supposed to do was predict and promote technological surprise. So we got blindsided by the Ruskies setting up a Sputnik satellite. So we said, we need to do lots of cool stuff. So how DARPA works is they have different groups like the IIO, the Information Innovation Office, and groups for other things. And then they do public-private partnerships. So they have a small core that's connected to the military and usually through the Special Access Programs Office, amongst others. And then they have external collaborators. And so when people say they're a DARPA employee or collaborator, usually what they're saying is they worked with somebody at DARPA, because DARPA makes a point to work with people in private industry, usually through academia. And they kind of take things to during that SRL, TRL 1, 2, 3. So very experimental, high risk, high return technology that private industry really doesn't want to take the risk on. So your cold fusions or your bioelectricity or your remote viewing or your ramjets for hypersonic shed or Caterpillar drives for, submarines and things like that. Now, if the project starts bearing fruit, what ends up happening is it'll graduate, and almost always somebody in private industry will commercialize it. So the greatest example of that is Kalo. It was a 2003 to 2008 program called Cognitive Assistant that learns and organizes. And that particular program turned into Siri. And then Apple bought Siri and put it into your phone. So DARPA's actually behind that. Go figure. Secret DARPA program. Not so secret. There are others too that are really nifty and cool. Like Project Proceed is one that we have a tangential connection to because it was started by John Launchberry. And John was super interested in homomorphic encryption. So that's operating on encrypted data without ever decrypting it. And John ended up creating a company called Galois, and Galois actually writes software in the Cardano ecosystem. So all the time we talk to the Galois people, and they still do DARPA programs all the time. So it's something that it's been in our orbit for a really, really long time. A lot of people intern there, a lot of people work there indirectly, but to actually work DARPA proper, you have to have military credentials and a CAC card. And they have a lot of public stuff they do, but they also do a lot of clearance stuff. Now, DARPA also has sister agencies. There's BARDA, the Biological Advanced Research and Projects Agency, and IARPA, the Intelligence Advanced Research and Projects Agencies. And then you also have the labs, Sandia, Los Alamos, Lawrence Livermore, and those are actually under the Department of Energy, believe it or not. And they do a lot of stuff with nuclear physics and high energy physics, but they also coordinate all the time with DARPA. And then there's R&D programs in the Navy, Air Force, and Army, and they also coordinate. And then there's a Directorate of Science and Technology at the CIA, because they never like working with anybody. And they do stuff occasionally with DARPA and occasionally with IARPA. So government's really a choose your own adventure, and it's almost impossible to know if you've worked with these people or not, because they work with everybody from Dell Computers to IBM to HP. And then they have these special companies that really are in the swamp, like Booz Allen Hamilton and others. And everything is always got a private component, an academic component, amongst other things. But overall, a force for technological good. We've made enormous progress as a society because of the things that they've done. You can always tell if people know what they're talking about or not by their broad claims and proclamations. You have to know the nature of an organization before you talk about an organization for certain people. I've already explained it, Mr. Swiss person. I love how they play in a game of technicalities. Okay, if I in a job say sleep with me or I fire you, what do you call that? You call that coercion, harassment. So if the Swiss government appoints an administrator with a warring board where the majority are non-Swiss and the minority are Swiss, and tells that board, either you pick your replacements or we fire all of you, and we'll basically put the organization into a receivership, and it'll be under the control of ESA, and then we'll eventually decide what to do with it years down the road. Is that free will? And isn't it in my right to say that that was a forced move by the Swiss government? We were the majority of the board, Emergo and Input Output. We had already decided we wanted to shut down the Swiss Foundation, move it to a different jurisdiction, and rebuild it. A, because the board members had private liability, personal liability. And B, because the organization could not fulfill its intended mandate to be a members-based organization, have a community-elected board, and be accountable to outcomes inside the ecosystem. We wanted to move it to a different location, move the funds out. Tried to do it. The minority of the board tried to fire the majority of the board. resulted in a court case. There was actually a lawsuit about it. We won the lawsuit. Then ESSA stepped in, appointed an administrator. That administrator put that on the table and said, you guys can't work together, so we just need to replace you for continuity's sake. So we had two options. Either the entire foundation's lost and there's no urgency behind ever turning it back on, and basically it becomes a defunct organization, or a new board that hopefully is independent will come in and maybe see the wisdom of what we were trying to do. So we rolled the dice and we went along with that plan. That new board is the board that's in today. That's a fact. That's what happened. We tried really hard for 3 years to work with them while they created Pragma and while they launched their own competing constitution and tried to derail the Constitutional Convention. While they went and poached employees, while they went and built competing clients that nobody asked for, so that they can go and try to disenfranchise IO developers, while they abstain from our funding, and do all these things. And they weaponize their ADA and say, if you don't support them, they'll vote against you in Catalyst. That's where we're at. Okay? So that's what your government did. Maybe I have a clue about what the intention was supposed to be for the Cardano Foundation. The original Cardano Foundation was not in Switzerland. It was the Digital Asset Foundation in the Isle of Man. I had founder rights to that organization. Michael Parsons created the Swiss Foundation with MME. And he gave himself founder rights with it, moved the assets from the Digital Asset Foundation. And we were able to force him out after bad things started happening. And then we had the majority of the board. The very first thing we tried to do with MME was try to figure out how to shut down the Swiss Foundation because it wasn't fit for purpose. So when they also say, well, you created it, so you own that, it's a lie. It's a straight up lie. There was never an intention to be in Switzerland. Just ended up in that way. And then it ended up in a governance structure that is not fit for purpose. And if you disagree, then say, why would anybody who has no equity upside take a personal risk and have personal liability and responsibility? Why would they do that? Well, that's the current structure of a Stiftung. They're not designed to run cryptocurrency ecosystems. There are organizations that are, like the DLT Foundation in Abu Dhabi, the Duna structure in Wyoming, that were literally created to give rights to token holders without giving equity, and also to have an elected board, and also to provide indemnity to the people who run the organization. They were created after everybody started pulling out of Switzerland and not doing Stiftungs anymore. Okay? That's where we're at. And instead what they do is they attack me as a person. And they say, oh, it's all about Charles's ego, and he's a control freak and a narcissist and a sociopath, and he just attacks anything he can't control. So I'm controlling it by asking for a community elected board that I don't control. And also in the beginning, I created the protocol. If I just wanted to control it, I would have just controlled it, not had the CF. I drew the diagram of the three entities. Does it make any sense to you? You guys need an organization like this. So we created one. It's called Intersect. And they did everything in their power to try to derail that or delegitimize it. But it's now funded. And the majority of the board is community elected, which was the original intent. It was going through a transition period. And now it's heading there. And it's becoming a real organization with good leadership behind it. And it's starting to do the things the CF was supposed to do from the very beginning. And it's accountable to its members who are made up of the ecosystem as a whole. Yeah, there's nothing that really can be done. The Swiss protect themselves. Under no circumstance will they let that money leave their jurisdiction. Is it true that Cardano refuses to work with the Constellation? You know, you're creating drama for no reason at all. There's never been a statement about that. I met with the Constellation founders in Washington, D.C. At a conference. We have a great relationship. Cynthia, one of our people that does all our DC policies, good friends with the founders of Constellation. There's no bad blood there. So you just made up something out of thin air. So no, it's not true. And you just made it up. Where'd you hear it from? Oh, I heard it online and I'm going to go spread that rumor. I'm going to go spread that rumor. They're good people, the Constellation people. We have no problem with the Constellation people. And we absolutely will find paths and ways to collaborate with them where and when it makes sense, especially on government procurement and contracting, because they work with the DoD. I think just having these AMAs creates drama. Well, it's also a way that we can have a real conversation. You directly get to talk to me, and I get to directly talk to you, and we get to dispel rumors and misconceptions, where and when they come up. Looking to buy a car, he's still rocking a Cadillac CTS-V. I've never owned a Cadillac CTS-V, so I own a Cadillac CT6, and I loved that car. It was so awesome, and every year got better, and they did what they always do, which is they canceled it the minute it actually started getting good. So I love that CTS-V. I also the CT6. I also have a Blackwing Cadillac Escalade, and that is an absolutely amazing vehicle. Having a lot of fun with it. Highly recommend it. When does the Giga Chad bull run finish? It hasn't even started yet. I'll let you know when it starts. What advice would you give a Web 2 software engineer getting into Web 3 and wanting to learn blockchain dev on Cardano? Should I create and host a full node? There are three things I would do. If you're a real developer, first, start from source and build the Haskell node. A lot of work. Figure out how to do that. You'll learn a lot in the process. Second, run a stake pool node and actually register the stake pool node and do the same for a DREP. And third, what I would do is take a mild complexity pedagogical project in Plutus or Aiken, probably Aiken because it's a much easier language to approach, and work your way backwards and actually implement and deploy that on the Cardano testnet. If you do those three things, and Mastering Cardano actually is a great book. It just came out. Highly recommend you read it. It talks about this stuff. You will be better than 99.9% Cardano ecosystem in terms of knowledge. And you'll know what you need to know to be dangerous. You won't be able to write full stuff, but at least you'll know enough to understand how everything works and why it's special. How do I work on my rhetoric in general? First, you spell it right. Better Speak. It's a good website. Coming to Berlin for the Cardano Summit? No. I already went to the Cardano Summit. It's called Rare Evo. It's great. And I'll be at Token 2049. Wouldn't recommend you go to Berlin. Nothing good there. You mentioned a year back you were trying to weight loss and watch your food. Was wondering, are you struggling to go on that journey? I love how you're like presupposing that that it's not working. I've lost 25 pounds. That's pretty good. Enormous amount. You can see it from the Bullet Ant video to today. It's actually a huge improvement. Charles, are you being gate kept from the question if you received the book I gave you, The Longmont Office, The Brotherhood of Eternal Love? You not forget the book if you got it. Well, if I got it, I didn't read it. It's probably sitting in my mail pile. I have a massive pile for it. When is cold plunging good? Heard it's terrible post-workout. It's why you do it pre-workout. Because you do the workout to warm up and you get all the brown fat activation. You're a fucking idiot. You're a fucking stupid piece of garbage.
I can understand why you're avoiding my question. How far are we from a quantum computer that could bring security problems into crypto? Ah!
Why is he saying this? Because he invested in a token that asserts to be quantum resistant. And he wants to point out that Cardano isn't, and his bags are going to be pumped because he's invested in a purported quantum resistant. I have spoken extensively on this topic, sir. We've worked with NIST on the post-quantum standards. You know about FIPS 203, 204, 205, and 206? No, don't know shit about that stuff. We're literally building a product that has quantum computer-like effects in it called Quantum Husky. We're working on a project right now called Halo 3 for a post-quantum folding scheme involving lattices. Oh my Lord, our head is so far up the quantum computer's ass that it can puppeteer it. And yet you ask this question, and I see you understand why we're avoiding. I am not avoiding your question. It's the beneath the dignity to ask. Go and do 5 seconds of basic research of my prior statements about it. Listen to the Sean Ryan show where I talk about for 45 fucking minutes from how a quantum computer works to how to protect against them. Look at our publications on the matter, including papers about what you can do with quantum computers, like the paper we wrote with Princeton on one-shot signatures. But you bought a token that purported to be quantum resistant, and they told you it's the only thing in the entire world that matters because these quantum computers are coming tomorrow, and they're going to fuck everybody's shit up. Where's the Majorana fermions, Microsoft? You promised me Majorana fermions, Microsoft. You promised me. Okay? Where's my photons, Xanadu? You promised me that. I just want some time crystals, yo. Okay? Where's my... ah! 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 That's what she said. Ever seen a ghost? What causes sleep paralysis? I did see a ghost at the darkness retreat. That's why I canceled the damn thing. I'll go do that again, but I'm going to do it in a slightly better setting. It was a bad setting. Would you ever consider taking IOG public? No. We will open up a fund though for the venture studio. Yeah, I know. Yeah. Patrick gets it. Do you believe in a draconian empire like dragon people, like the Scarens in Farscape, like the Dragonborn, in Skyrim, or the Dragonborn in Baldur's Gate 3? I mean, you gotta give me more on your dragon shit. And are we just going down this road because you have like weird ass scaly fantasies? Subgroup of the furries, they dress up in lizard costumes and do terrible things to each other. Is that what we're doing here? Because we're not going down that road. No. I'm going to slither away from it. When add real TVL with stablecoins on ADA DeFi? I'm trying. We proposed the Cardano Sovereign Wealth Fund, and already there's just so many politics and blowback and all this other stuff. And it's just $50 million. It's one of those things where everybody wants it, but they don't want to make a commitment for it. And then you have to go drag them kicking and screaming every step of the way. And then you run into this situation where it finally gets through and then you get criticized brutally for it. But then after it gets pushed through, they say you didn't do enough. It's only 50 million. You needed 500. It's like you just can't win with these guys. So you just ignore it and you push through. This is a better one. How far is Cardano away from being quantum resistant, if ever? It'll come in stages, and I did several videos on this. The first step is a post-quantum checkpointing system, and then you start bringing in quantum artifacts on the proof side of the system. So quantum signatures with Mithril, quantum folding schemes for Starstream, and then you eventually add support for post-quantum signatures in the ledger, and then at some point you move consensus over to that. But you have to remodel Ouroboros from a quantum adversary. So you start with a quantum adversary GKL paper, so QROM for GKL. So it's about 5 to 10 years of migratory work, but we have the time for it. The reason why we don't do it now is that while we have the technology, the signatures are 10 times larger. So not a lot of upside to protect yourself against a future threat. The idea, to kind of give you a conception of it, imagine that like some invading force is coming in about 10 to 15 years. Going quantum resistant now for cryptocurrency is like wearing armor every day, really heavy, hot armor to protect yourself against this Mongol horde that's coming in 10 or 15 years. So you're out there in the sun, it's 100 degrees, you put on your plate mail and you're burning alive in it. And you're like, I am wearing this to protect myself from the horde. Say, well, the horde's not here yet. Oh yeah, but I got to protect myself from that horde. You should right now be talking to blacksmiths about better armor to defend against the horde that's coming in 10 years. You should be talking about fortifications and where you would put them. You should be talking about training. You should be talking about protocol design, these types of things. That's what we're doing because there's no urgency. It's not like tomorrow one of these things is going to come and kill all of us. But we know it will come and we have to prepare for it. And that's why you have a program and plan and you show iterative progress. And eventually when they do come, they come to a very hard target. But you don't have the downside of wearing that armor in the hot sun. So all you people about tokens and those post-quantum things, you're wearing armor in the desert for an army that won't come until you're 10 years older. Who wins the game today, Notre Dame or Miami? I was always on the Purdue side of that, guys. So anytime Notre Dame loses is a good day. It's a good day. Their little gold dip helmets. Charles, a Sateri Mawe warrior. Will you be in Brazil for the Cardano Summit October 15th? I'm North American Sateri Mawe, not South American Sateri Mawe. Slight difference. But we're bringing the ants up. We also have to use snakes in our rituals too. They don't have snakes. We have snakes. No, I don't believe I will be. I've been traveling extensively. You hate the Irish and screw the chicken. Huh, what are you doing, Charles? It'll be coming to you. And I hear we're a racist now, Father. Now, is this a full-time commitment, or can I just be racist on the weekends? Everybody from Ireland's going to know that reference, by the way. Charles, do you believe we were in a computer simulation? If remote viewing is the real deal, that would be a explanation for it. You're actually seeing the source program, because the main program, the kernel of the system, is the Universal Holographic Information Field. I love this one too. Any updates on the Africa Students Project? You know what happened there. We wrote an exhaustive blog post about what happened there, but you ask because you live in one of those Cardano's bad circles, and they just babble and babble and babble and babble and babble about all these things. And we told the whole story. And you know what? I'm going to do it again just for you. I'm going to show you the link, and you're going to read it, and then you're going to ignore it, and then you're going to ask me again because you're part of that group of Charles haters. And that's okay, because you ate paint chips when you were a kid, and your mom drank when you were in a fetus, and you can't help it. You can't control yourself. So we're going to do it again. We're going to type in Cardano, IOHK, Ethiopia, and the very first thing that comes up, number one on the blog site, is the article written November 27th, which fully explained how hard it was and what happened and how we worked in a war zone and we were never paid. And we pushed as hard as we could. Reflections, delivering change in Ethiopia, lessons and reflections. Big ass article, explains the whole thing, all the sources, all the other stuff. And we talk about how we at least got Prism out of it. And we learned a lot in the process. And that crew went over to Kenya. And now we have the RealFi team, which is launching a product next year based upon all those things. So you can't always get what you want, but get something good. But you know it. It's there. That's a link. November 27th, almost a year ago. But you still ask. Why you ask? Because you belong to Charles's bad group. Paint chips is so a 90s. There's still kids eating paint chips because he probably grew up in the 90s, lived in an old house, had those paint chips. No. Paint chip brigade. Who is the most famous person or celebrity in your contact list that we wouldn't expect to be there? Ooh, damn. That's an interesting one. Let me take a look real quickly here. Let's see what I got. Contacts. Here we go. A lot of congressmen, a lot of senators, a lot of CEOs. David Rothschild. Got it right there in my contact list. How about that? There's actually a picture of us together too. He invited me up to his workshop in LA when I was at the Milken. He's trying to hit me up for a project he wanted to do or drive around the world in some sort of car thing. Because he created the Plastiki. It's a plastic boat he sailed across the Pacific. And all those conspiracy theorists, they're now like, oh God, Charles knows the Rothschilds. What do we do? What do we do? What do we do? Yeah, I know a lot of people. You keep loving on that shield, man. Love the shield, love the shield, love the shield. You've said it 400 times. Yeah, I get it. You love the shield. What do you think about the idea of a feeding machine for Nike powered by Cardano as a fun way to showcase how blockchains can bring joy to global brands? This has actually been done before using Lightning to feed chickens. Adam Dean, if you are listening, let's make this happen for Nike. We call it Feed the Pig, feedthepig.com, feedthepig.io, feedthepig.org, something like that. And you just push a button and it releases a pellet or a little bit of food for Nike. We got a little camera there. Camera turns on. Nike comes over. He goes, yum, 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 yum. Yeah, and it'll be Hydra powered. And you have to use Nike Coin to feed it. CTO of Nike Coin. Talk to Adam Dean. Make this happen. He's a good pig. See, this is why we do these things. We bring people together. He's a good pig. Cardano DeFi volume dead. How to fix it? I've been trying to. It's called Bitcoin DeFi. It's called Midnight. It's called all these things. We're pulling them together. Oh, Lord, there's so many moving pieces to it. And every step of the way, they attack us. And we just keep pushing. Charles, I'm making a chili sauce soon. Would you like to taste it? Yes, send it to the office. That vending machine was incredible. The level of engagement we got was unbelievable. There was this one dude who spent 3 days going to every booth, every presentation, twice, just to get enough coins to buy the Louis Vuitton purse that was inside of it for his wife because it was his 9th anniversary. It is such a brilliant business idea because you get incredible engagement from everybody at all the different booths from that. Charles, when will you address the rumors that you drink diesel in your room when no one's looking? Do you believe in the Illuminati? Yes, they do exist. And no, I'm not a member. My wife is really into true crime podcasts. Any suggestions you have that are interesting? You gotta be careful with that, man. She might like those a little too much, if you get my drift. Have somebody else start tasting your wine. I'm just saying. Charles, have you ever been vaccinated? Yes, extensively. Come from a medical family. I've had hundreds of vaccines throughout the years, from flu shots, yellow fever vaccine. Hardest was Biothrax, horrible vaccine. The COVID vaccines, I got the first 2, Pfizer, and regret it. I still have pain in the area where the injection site came. It was actually one of the reasons I started my clinic. And I got so tired of the orthodoxy and the mainstream medical side of things. Got lured into that whole thing thinking, come on, it's not possible that 1 billion people would be guinea pigs. It would create a rebellion. And we were. Trust gone. Totally gone. So we just have to move forward, and we're going to move forward and do our own thing. Charles, a group is doing research on proposed changes. KA not min pool cost. Curious to know your thoughts. Join Intersect. There's a protocol committee there. That's the place to talk about them. Are you happy with Kennedy's work right now? Absolutely. I've sent him text messages about it. He's a good man, and he's a very high integrity man. He has walked into the wolf's den, and he's fighting every day like Liam Neeson into the gray, and he's winning. That guy's a beast. He's a man of enormous integrity, and I'm just glad he's there. He represents us. I mean, think about it, man. Honestly speaking, it's like you got guys saying, let's get rid of high fructose corn syrup and food dyes, artificial food dyes. And now you got people on the other side be like, no, I want the high fructose corn syrup. No, I want the food dyes. Fuck you. Vaccinate me, govern me harder. This is the level of hate these guys have. I thought the fucking liberals were like the yoga people and the vegan people, the health food people. Didn't you? But now, like, Trump derangement is so strong that if you're like, well, let's do the yoga stuff and let's do the vegan stuff, they're like, no, I want processed food, spam on my plate every day, and bathe it in fructose corn syrup. I'm going to drink it from a pail. Orange Man bad. It's like, can we at least agree on this one? No, we can't. I never thought there would be like high fructose corn syrup lobby, man. Just have them make ethanol. Okay. They make the same amount of money. Just give them ethanol money. I'll put more ethanol in my gasoline. Ugh. Road Art reposted this stream. Thank you, Road Art. Take a look at that little PRP, huh? Yeah. Charles, how can he walk into the wolf's den, though? How is it possible for them to allow him in? Why do you think they tried to shoot Trump twice? Guys, they don't want this. They don't want this at all. What's your blood type? I am nervous around vampires. Will your clinic offer gene therapy for cosmetic reasons one day? Would love to knock out my myostatin with ADA. Myostatin inhibition. Yeah, we are looking into plasmids, but it's going to be long down the road. We have different research agendas at the moment, but through partners, we may bring some of those on through clinical trials, but it'll be beyond 2026. Charles, maybe I just want a more compassionate, empathetic, honorable person in office. You and me both. I agree with you completely. We talk about epistemic hygiene. You know, there's some people out there that are just like warriors where they have deep, deep critical thinking, and they really take the time to understand you. They understand where you're coming from. They steelman your position. They weigh the facts, and they try to make good decisions. And there are people out there who have great moral hygiene, and they try to see where they've been inconsistent, where they've lied, where they've had integrity issues. They admit faults, admit problems. So you look at Robert Kennedy, he listens to both sides. He admitted he was a drug addict. He's admitted to having affairs. And you know what? It's not like we just burn him to the ground, but the first step is to admit that you've done wrong. You look at the life accomplishments, and, you know, for the most part, if people did business with you, is it good or bad? Absolutely. There's massive glaring red flags on the T-Man. The Orange Man has huge red flags. It is what it is. And he punishes people for even pointing those things out. I don't punish people when they point out that they have differences of opinion, disagreements with me. The red line that I draw is you can't accuse me of criminal conduct. So Lara Shin can write books to the end of the day saying I'm the worst human being in the world and I've said all these horrible things. You know, we didn't sue her when we could have. She claims I don't have a college degree. Graduated from Front Range at 18. 18. I graduated from high school at 15. That's a verifiable thing. You know, it's just, okay, I dropped out of CU Boulder. I never said I graduated from CU Boulder. And I was in a joint track program where they had both bachelor's and master's. And so I could take graduate classes and undergraduate classes. I started at Metro because I wanted to be a doctor and said, I don't want to do this doctor thing. So I went over to Metro to CU Boulder to do math. There's not a lot of there, right? And she just says all this stuff and represents the worst possible way. But you know what? That's her truth. And if that's how she wants to sell books, that's fine. When you say I've broken the law and I've stolen from people, that's a very different truth. That's not a qualitative assessment about my character. That's a Boolean. Did it happen or not? Which is why the audit report is coming out. And that's why we demand apologies from the people that went down that road, because it's just not true. Didn't happen. And it's verifiably not true based upon public record, because we have all the documents, terabytes and terabytes of things. And a lot of the distaste for Trump is people just really hate him as a human being. But then they go a step further and try to impugn upon him some grand criminal conspiracy and some grand misconduct. He is no more out there than any real estate person in New York City or reality TV star. He's about even with his peers. And having met his kids, I've never had any issues with them. They've never lied to me. They've been very kind and gracious. And I've met now 3 of his children. I've met Eric, Ivanka, and Don, and multiple times for Eric, and once for Don, and once for Ivanka. Never had any issues with them. And they've been nothing but high integrity people around me. So you hate him, and you hate him because 24 hours a day, 7 days a week, every single thing he's ever said and done wrong has been broadcasted in the media in the worst possible light. There is no reality where you can't hate the man given those circumstances. If every single thing you do wrong, you should have wiped with 3 pieces of toilet paper instead of 2 pieces of toilet paper. Though. This is CNN. Breaking news. Trump has a dirty butt. You know, and do I wish there were different outcomes? The whole crypto thing was not good. I was not a fan of Trump coin. And I thought it created problems for us getting legislation passed to say, maybe, just maybe, we get clarity in these other things out of the way, and then you do Trump coin after that, okay? Not saying don't do it, just timing, because it introduces unnecessary complications. It is what it is. You work your way through it. You take the good with the bad, and this is what they do. They're a force of nature. He's been elected president twice non-consecutively. Grover Cleveland was the only other guy to do it. He did it while being tried for dozens of felonies that were all made up. Okay, they were made up. By the way, you just noticed that the appeals court overturned the fraud case, and he doesn't have to pay the $500 million anymore. You notice that? They just overturned that. Was that a front page in the New York Times or any of these other things? No. And all this other stuff is going to be unwound. So when John Edwards does it, it's not a problem. When Bill Clinton does it, it's not a problem. When Gary Hart does it, it's not a problem. Donald Trump does it, we have to arrest him and charge him with 31 felonies. Okay? It's political. And when you make it political, you damage the integrity of the entire system. And now we're all surprised. Oh, Kamala Harris lost her Secret Service detail. Well, most vice presidents do. Oh, they've raided John Bolton's house. Well, that stuff happens. You were all cheering it on when the FBI was going through Melania's underwear drawer and just waited with bated breath and glee that that was happening to Trump. But now suddenly his shoe's on the other foot. And like, oh, it's literally Hitler. It's going to destroy America. All our institutions are gone. Now give me 14 more vaccines and shut down the nation. And, and give me leaders where I don't even get to vote for them. You guys on the left, you're just stupid, honestly speaking. You voted for somebody that you didn't have a choice in picking, and you have the balls to call this a democracy. Your party bosses gave you Kamala Harris with no primary, zero, zilch. And you had a dementia puppet who's dying of stage 4 cancer that we all know takes years and years and years to develop, who even admitted it in a speech in 2022. And you just gleefully voted for him because Orange Man bad. You have no right to criticize anyone until you clean up your own house. Clean it up. Fire the party bosses. Demand a primary process that actually has real democracy. You could actually have had a real candidate, not a combination of Herbert the pervert with Dementia Joe. It's literally what you got. And you let him run again. And now you want Gavin Newsom. Get your house in line, Then you earn the right to actually lead. But no, Orange Man bad. Kamala Harris was forced upon us. And I'm sad to say, and people called this out loudly, you didn't, because you voted for her. I'm sorry, it doesn't work that way. You don't vote, or you vote for a third-party candidate out of protest. That's what you do. But then you were told, well, you have to pick her because Orange Man bad. Stand up and have a goddamn pair of balls. I know you like cutting them off on your side of the aisle, but have a pair, okay? And just vote against her and say, we will not tolerate this, ever. Don't give any money to her and don't vote for her out of protest of not having democracy. You don't legitimize the process, but you legitimize the process and then said you called it out loudly. You didn't call it out loudly because tens and tens of millions of you showed up and voted for her. At some point, you just take to the streets. Do you think a new French Revolution is coming in the next 10 years? Absolutely. It's called blockchain. We're taking our power back. We're taking our banking system back, our payment system back, our custody system back, our identity system back, our political systems back. Once we have control of the money, we have control of everything. And we got to give it back to the people. Full stop. And then we're getting rid of all these middlemen and kill all these guys. Is Nike already in Bison Valley Ranch? I think they put them in. That there's a plan for a Nike crossover. But, these are the crossover deals that we're talking about making. So you have all these opportunities to basically, because there's now a community, there's a culture, there's an ecosystem. And guys, if you build a product on Cardano, then what you need to do is you need to say, okay, well, how do I be a member of this ecosystem? So there are Merco projects like USDA and Yoroi. There's IO projects like Lace and Bison Valley and Quantum Hosky and Midnight. There's CF projects like Wine and Bullets registration in Dubai. Maybe Petrobras, I don't know. Whatever they got going on there. But there's stuff. There's an ecosystem. And what you got to do is you got to say, okay, how does my project relate to this? And there's interfaces. And so our job is to build good interfaces. Most effective interface I'd say at the CF is Rafa. Good guy, very high integrity guy. He's one of the few people that I really like. For input output, it's JJ. And Phil, the CEO of Emergo, is really taking a dedicated hand trying to make things right with the community. So you get to know him. You reach out to him. You say, how do we do something together? And think small. Don't think big. Something where maybe it's a joint appearance, or it's a Twitter space together, or it's an integration, or it's a marketplace sharing. Because the mistake people do is they just ask for too much. They're like, hey, I just met you and this is crazy, but let's get married and have children. Like you're the overly attached girlfriend. It's like, whoa, you gotta buy me a drink first. So, buy a drink. Do that whole thing. Go buy a drink. And in the process of buying that drink, you build a relationship, and you build that relationship, then you do a next project, and keep going. So that's what we do with all of our partners. And so Lace is an aggregation point for integrations. And so there's going to be some Sneck stuff in there. We're going to have some Nike stuff in there. There's going to be some stuff for Bison Valley, and we're going to have, and that's Charles Token and stuff. And so stuff is going to be stuffed in. Okay. And all the Midnight stuff, we're always trying to find a Lace angle for that. So that's a very nice touch point for partnerships. And it's the same when you look across our product portfolio. So I'd highly recommend that you do that and you think around that. Start small, find something tangible that can be done in 3 to 6 months. The vending machine idea was just a phenomenal one. Adam Dean came up with it. He told me in Japan when we were on a tour with his guys at Drip Drops, and I was just like, this is so good. This is great. And so we called up the Hydra team and we said, we got to do this. Now that it's done, we're already talking about a much bigger relationship, much larger investment, much more resources, but we had to get past that to demonstrate that that was possible. And for them to showcase it, it worked and it delivered. And that's something that's going to be huge. And now that exists, you can think, can I plug my thing into his thing? So know your ecosystem, know all those touch points, and it really helps you navigate. Charles, do you use solar power on your farm? That's a lot of questions. I do, 250 kilowatts of panels. And I was actually just walking the system the other day, got about 400 kilowatts of kilowatt hours of battery banks. So during the daytime, the solar powers, and the nighttime, the batteries are there. We had to install an ATS system because we couldn't get the grid to form with the generator that we have. There's a impedance mismatch in the two. So we just separated the entire grid out, and we treat the solar like the grid, and then the backup is the generator that runs on propane. But it took a while to figure out how to build that. And, solar is great, guys. It's a wonderful technology. For domestic use, solar shingles, that's what makes sense. Every roof in the United States should be solar shingles at this point. We just should dump $5-10 billion of R&D money every year into that for 10-15 years, get that done solid, and just mandate that roof shingles have to be solar panels. And it becomes like air conditioning. It's a standard thing. You have a massive distributed grid then. And over time, they're all there, and just have a good recycling side of it. And then the battery technology is incredible too. The batteries that I got, they're made by LG, great chemistry, a lithium polymer, and they last 30 years. And that same footprint in 30 years' time, the energy density will be about 2 to 3 times higher, and they'll likely be carbon batteries. And those batteries will be probably 1.2 megawatts to 1.5 megawatts, somewhere in there. So that whole paradigm works really, really well. And it's free power. And it's just the sun shining. And it's a few acres of a footprint. And I can power 15 structures with it. I love it. The cost keeps going down too. The cost of that deployment of the 250 kilowatts and all the batteries, over $1 million right now. But remember, it's commercial installation. We'll see a 10x reduction in the next 20 years. So that system will cost 150 grand, which means it's basically rolled into the price of most homes. Can I plug my thing into his thing? That's called docking. Remember, it's not gay if you have socks on. Ever thought of buying Snek Energy as an onboarding strategy? They send me Snek Energy drink to the office every month. We have like 400 cans of this shit, and everybody's afraid to drink it. You heard it here first, folks. And now you know the rest of the story. Solar panels cause roof damage over 50% of the time. Okay, well, epistemic hygiene. You know what we're going to do is we are going to go to our good friend Grok. This is an advertisement for Mr. Elon Musk. We're going to go to Grok and we are going to ask that question. Okay, so we got it right up here. Fact check this question from my comments on a live stream. Solar panels cause roof damage over 50% of the time. What about hail? All right. So I don't know what the answer is going to be. And what we're going to do is we're going to change it over to expert because it's going to take a little bit of time. Share screen. You guys ready? Wow! And let's just take a look. Let's see what happens. Okay. So Grok is looking. The collective cosmic consciousness of the Grok is doing this. It is looking. It is giving me two responses, but the solar panels and the 50% the hail damage. All right, it's searching. Solar panels. Ba-dum-bum-bum-bum. Okay, so response B, and we'll just read that one out. The claim that solar panels cause roof damage over 50% of the time appears to be false and unsubstantiated. Available data on solar panel failures, which could include roof-related issues if installation is faulty, shows an extremely low overall rate of about 0.05%. Roof damage from solar panels is rare and typically only occurs due to poor installation practices, such as improper sealing or mounting on unsuitable roof structures, rather than panels themselves being inherently damaging. When installed correctly by reputable professionals, solar panels do not cause leaks or structural issues, and they can even protect the roof from UV rays, rain, and other weather elements. Regarding hail specifically, solar panels are built to withstand hail up to about 1 inch in diameter, falling at speeds around 50 miles per hour, as standard manufacturer testing certifications. Larger hail traveling at higher speeds can crack glass and cell damage or shatter panels, leading to power loss or reduced efficiency. However, such extreme hail events are uncommon, and the overall risk to residential solar setups is low, though not zero in hail-prone areas. In fact, panels can act as a shield for the underlying roof during hailstorms, reducing direct impact on shingles or other materials. Large-scale solar farms have seen significant hail damage in rare storms, like a Texas facility hit by baseball-sized hails. But these are outliers, and insurance costs often cover such events with an average claims of around $58 million for utility-scale projects. All right, let's look at the other one. And this one also says it's false and unsubstantiated. No statistics indicate damage occurs anywhere near the majority of the claims. How about that? That's called epistemic hygiene. People just say stuff. What you do is you check it out. Now, if you wanted to really go down, you'd have to actually generate a deep research report. You'd go through, look at all the different sources. You'd see where the sources came from, and you'd go and do all the pinpoints and things like that. You'd also look at the P&Ls of the solar companies that do the majority of the installation. You look at the warranty information. So you can look if they're publicly traded at the 10Ks, and you can see how much money they spend on repairing installations, because if they put something in, they have a warranty, and they have to pay out. And then you can look at consumer opinion, all this stuff. I could spend the next 6 hours walking you guys through that hygiene. But you know what? We'll let Grok do the work for this question because it's absurd. If they had a 50% failure rate, no one would use the technology. It's absurd. There are solar plants all throughout the world, and people have them all the time. We see them all the time. And so it's obviously belies common sense as a technological category. Well, but your problem is you listen to alt-right conservative radio 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. And what does it do? It programs you to things that are just simply not true. I listened to Rush Limbaugh all the time. I really was entertained by him and I enjoyed him as a person, but he said stuff that wasn't true about solar. And I know it's not true because I have a 250 kilowatt solar field out there. And I live in Colorado, in Wyoming. We got high winds. We got big ass hail. 3 years those panels have been there. I have 10 panel banks, hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of panels. Only 2 panels have been damaged in 3 years' time. And there was a minor fix to replace them, and they were warranted. On a cloudy day, we still pull 150 kilowatt hours. Exactly. Hail is a disaster, Colorado. This guy gets it. So those panels survive despite the hail. I'm a fan of yours and a fan of Elon. I believe you guys joining forces would lead to a lot of good things in the world. I've tried a few times to work with Elon, and we could never get there. I've tried a lot to reach out to his people. I've talked to his brother personally. I've met him before, and he's just not really interested. He lives in his own world, in his own bubble, and it is what it is, and you just move forward. He does his things. I do my things. At some point, there'll be an overlap. And if there's a good collaboration, it's good collaboration. The first thing I tell, the advantage of being in venture capital is you get to see all the outcome space. You get to see the good outcomes. You get to see the bad outcomes. So when some people come to me with an idea, the very first thing I say is, okay, how many people are going to be required to make this happen? And they say, oh, it's me and my 2 co-founders. Great. Do you guys have a founders agreement? Almost always. What's a founders agreement? Almost always. So I give them a template and I say, here are some best practices and principles of a founders agreement. Come back to me with a signed agreement. Now, what happens is they talk about a lot of stuff, uncomfortable things. What happens if we're bad people? What if we did this or what if we did that? And they're like, oh, well, then I have to fire you. Well, how do I fire you? How do we have a non-voluntary detachment? Oh no, and they talk it out. Now, if they're really serious about the idea, they negotiate, they come to terms, and they sign the agreement. But that's the first and single most important negotiation you'll ever make as an entrepreneur, is that founders agreement. Only after they sign the founders agreement do I even take them seriously, because I say, okay, now you're real people. You can convince people to do stuff. You can negotiate with people. You can have difficult conversations. And also, you signed something where I understand exactly what I'm getting in bed with. When you do these partnerships, like when Elon came together with Trump, they tried to pull a Crassus, Pompey, Caesar triumvirate, and they didn't have founders agreement. They didn't have a linkage point. They didn't understand the rules of the relationship that they got themselves into and the boundaries and conditions of those rules. So they both had an understanding of what that relationship was going to be like. And Trump gonna Trump. So when Elon didn't get what he wanted, he freaked the fuck out. And he's like, ah! And he's like, you have seen client list. I was for my own political party. And of course, Trump's Trump. So he's gone Trump. He Trumped out. But they had some sort of gentleman's understanding and they had listed out what they wanted in the relationship. Then you know what? That never would have happened. That's the challenge of doing business with Elon Musk. He's a walking Dunning-Kruger factory for all these different domains. It is not possible to be a subject matter expert on 10 fields at the same time. You can pretend that way, but you lose depth as you start going down. Great example would be Neuralink. You have these wires and you put them into your brain. We've been doing that for a long time. You have the DBS chips and these deep brain stimulation chips. They use it for treatment of Parkinson's, epilepsy, diagnostic studies. They put them both animals and humans. So you have these things called glial cells that are inside the brain. And the brain is like Jell-O, okay? So if you take a pen, I don't have a pencil. Okay, you take like a pen or something. You stick it in the Jell-O. Initially, the Jell-O forms around it pretty well. But then you take that bowl of Jell-O and you push it around, and you know what happens is it starts moving in the bowl of Jell-O. What happens to that channel that thing's in? It gets mechanical damage from pencil moving around. And wires do the same thing. The glial cells also, they want to protect the brain from this. So what do? Because neurons are very special. They form a layer around the implant to kind of wall it off, to prevent it from being able to damage things around it. Now, if you have a cellular wall that forms around something, that means you lose your electrical connectivity. And a lot of people also think that these things are shocking the brain. They're not. They create an electrical charge on the surface, which changes the action potentials, the neurons around there, that makes them trigger and fire. It is not electrons that the body electricity runs on. It's ions. Okay? Ion channels, protons. That's what they run on, not electricity. It's a different thing. Electricity happens as a result of those changes of those action potentials, but it requires ion channels to be opened and closed. And so it's the wrong modality. So he drills holes in people's heads. He puts these wires in. The only way you can prevent bad things from happening is first you have to make the wires really small, which means he has to invent robots to install them because humans can't because they're too small. The second thing you have to do is you have to make them out of biophilic materials, biocompatible materials. So you actually have to find polymers that conduct electricity, which is really hard. And they have them. Here's the other problem. When you put a wire in a human brain, that's like putting a wire in a vat of salt water and vinegar. Over time, it'll corrode the structure. That's fine if it's there for 15 minutes, but what if it's there for 10 years or 20 years or 30 years? Now, you can go talk to a neurosurgeon who does deep brain stimulation for Parkinson's and stuff. You can go talk to any of the people that make these things for a living. They'll go and tell you all these problems about that. Because at the end of the day, you want the ability to read. That's what your end goal is, okay? That's the direction we want to go to. And eventually write. Okay. All right. So they tell you, try to avoid directly drilling a hole in the head and putting something in the brain. So Synchron, for example, started by a neurosurgeon, an MD, PhD. He says, well, we know how to put stents in. We put stents in all day long as doctors. Why don't we just put a stent in through an artery and take it into the brain and just have it sit there and it can read through the cell membrane. You get a really good signal because it's deep and close and it's not directly in contact with that hostile caustic environment. And the glial cells won't do much. And it turns out that works. And they've already put dozens of stents in, and they do the exact same thing as the telepathy of Neuralink. There's thousands of these things that exist. And you see it all the time. And he just says stuff. And there's no accountability behind the things that he says. And he's so good at marketing. And he's so good at presenting these things to the world. And because he pushes things along, okay, kind of give him his due. And truly remarkable stuff. The chopsticks, truly remarkable. The reusable rockets, truly remarkable. These are scientific and engineering marvels and miracles. And you got to give the guy his due. But he takes himself too seriously, which is why he lies about his character on Path of the Exile and claims he played all these hours when he bought an account. Why? You're already an oppressive person. You're worth $500 billion. You've done things no human being's ever done. You're exploring and experimenting things. You got to learn how to listen to people. They tell you it's a bad idea. It's a bad idea. I wanted to do blood stem cells, and they said, no, fat stem cells are the way to go. I made it work. I'm filing a patent on a mechanism to extract them and minimally invasively. And we're going all in on adipose because they say, that's the way it's got to be. That's what the experts tell me. What the fuck do I know? I'm not a stem cell scientist. You got to have humility in these things. You're not a domain expert in 10 different fields. Your job, after talking to the experts, is to use your business and systems knowledge to say, where's the business opportunity? And what is the bet I'm prepared to take? The bigger the trade-off mitigation, the riskier it is on the scientific side, the more experimental the technology happens to be. You can play it safe. You can play it aggressive. Stem cells. You want to play it aggressive? iPSC, induced pluripotent stem cells. That's aggressive. Take a skin cell, you put Yamanaka factors on it, turns into anything you want, including a teratoma, and it creates cancer. It's horrible. So not so good. But it's the thing that could potentially regenerate everything. Mesenchymal stem cells, safe. They're in your body. You use them every day. Why? Because when you get cut, what heals that? Your body has to have a regeneration system, okay? But their differentiatability is not as good as iPSC, and you can't reach all the tissue types. Now, here's a fundamental question. What makes the stem cell turn into what you want it to be? Is it DNA? Is it a chemical signal? Maybe, just maybe, it's electrical. How about that? It's what Michael Levin's looking at. So who gives a shit if you vote on iPSC or MSC? Maybe, just maybe, you have the wrong modality for regeneration. So the innovation may not be the cell type where one can turn into cancer and the other one doesn't. The innovation may actually be in a fundamentally different paradigm of how these things work. And that's what Mike was studying in his labs. So who knows? You got to sort it all out. So you take a series of iterative experiments, you learn a little bit along the way as you go, and you say, what can I do? What can I treat with these things and where they stand? And how do I build a whole pipeline so that I can always have autologous adipose-derived stem cells? And then how do I get them to be used clinically again and again, and I get data, and I get more data? And then how do we generate good hypotheses from this? And let's follow the bouncy ball. Good science, you follow the bouncy ball. If the goal is to get better brain signals, you have to always ask, what is the least invasive, least committal way of doing that? Drilling a hole in a person's head, inserting wires directly into the brain is a last resort situation, which is why it's using breakthrough status stuff and right to try stuff, and they're doing it as a last resort for quadriplegics. It's not a cosmetic thing. But you see what Musk does is he creates this image that they're going to have brain implants for everybody in 10 years, neural lace in your brain, and you all have superhuman capabilities from it. We don't even know the language. And again, you can't shock neurons and expect them to reliably do things. It's like trying to play a piano with a mallet and play Beethoven's symphony with it. You just can't do that. It doesn't work. It's not something you do. You have to have a different mechanism or program. DARPA has a program that's actually looking into this mechanism. I'll show you guys right now. It's really cool stuff. DARPA. The BETR program. Here we go. The Bioelectronics for Tissue. The Bioelectronics for Tissue Regeneration program will develop technology aimed at speeding warfare recovery, thus resilience, by directly intervening in wound healing. To do this, researchers are build an adaptive system that uses actuators to biochemically or biophysically stimulate tissue sensors to track the body's complex response to this stimulation, and adaptive learning algorithms to integrate actual sensor data and dictate intervention to the actuators. After establishing this closed-loop control over physiological processes, BETR researchers will integrate these devices into a single platform that guides the tissue real-time along with optimal growth pathways. Ultimately, through the BETR program, DARPA aims to provide medical interventions with necessary sophistication to more quickly restore human tissues after injury. The notable effort focuses on injuries from warfare, such as blasts. If the program succeeds, you get a whole bunch of crazy stuff. And Leonard's doing it over at the Biological Technologies office. Really cool stuff, right? Well, there's a lot more to the story here about how this is actually done. And it's not just bandages that heal wounds. It's electrical programming of your body. You have to be able to tell your regenerative system where to go. It's electrotaxis of the cells. And you have to be able to tell your cells using electrical signals through ion channels, basically what to do once they're there. You're programming tissues. Well, if you have that level of fidelity and control, then maybe, just maybe, you have a much better mechanism of communicating with cells and giving them instructions than electrical signals. because you're not going to shock the neurons. And that's all that Neuralink can do, is charge the outer surface of the wires that go into the brain, hoping that they'll cause these things to change. Well, here's a technology that I would bet on if I wanted to do this. At the Weiss Institute of Harvard. Some of the coolest things is from Mike's lab. Xenobots. You know what you do is you take a frog, you take an embryo out of a frog, and then you just basically change its growth. So you shock it in all the right ways, and you can create a little robot with it, a biological robot, and they can be self-replicating, and they can be intelligent in that they can be goal-directed and interface with their environment. Okay, so Xenobots could potentially be a much better medium to actually program things in the body and interface with things in the body. And they teach you a lot of very cool stuff. There's Mike, there's Josh, there's Doug, there's Lindsay, and there's Sam. And they're all doing some really cool stuff. But boy, Xenobots are really interesting. And studying Xenobots, you learn a lot about how the electrome inside the body works and how you can use the electrome to take shapes and tissues. By the way, a lot of people say, well, you know, amphibians, frogs, they are super regenerative. Like an axolotl, you can cut off its leg, it grows a new leg. Well, what they've done with Xenobots now is they've taken tissue from the trachea and they've turned it into a single cell organism that actually can navigate its things. So that's actually human tissue, what they've been able to gather. And they've turned a human tissue into what looks like a little amoeba floating around the water. It's amazing what these guys can do. It's incredible stuff. So, you know, if I was Musk and I had those types of resources, I would have bought Synchron, and I say that's our near-term technology, and there's a great management team there and phenomenal people that really know what they're doing, and we can be in the human brain within 12 months. In fact, Synchron's implanted a lot more than Neuralink has. Then I would start investigating a better communication system with neurons. How do I talk their language, the language of ions, not electrons? How do I talk that language? I want protons. Okay. And then I would go and braid all the DARPA programs, you know, BETR, the electrons. Galvani Biosciences is one, and they're working on these things for different modality, but they're still trying to figure out that language. It's a joint venture between Google and GSK, and go build up that whole thing and come up with a new paradigm of how to communicate with the brain and read from the brain. And eventually you'll figure out something. And these Xenobots, I think, are actually a really good first principle concept. And can we create some programmable machine that we can put into the human body and have them travel around? And before you say, oh, I'm not so comfortable with like organisms running around my body, what do you call your microbiome? You have more cells in the microbiome that are foreign cells than you have tissue in your own body with all this bacteria. And we co-evolved with them and they work together. And you know what that means is that when they work together, they create neurotransmitters together. They digest your foods together. If you have the wrong one, you're lactose intolerant, all kinds of things. So you already live co-evolved with external organisms that have hitched a ride and done something. So why can't we just create some more and have them eat the plaque in your arteries and have them go and repair stuff and have them tag cancer cells with something that can make it easy to attack them? Or calm cancer cells down, because cancer cells live in a network and the cells around them have just as much to do with cancer than the cancer itself. And it turns out if you talk to the cells around them, they might be able to convince the cancer cell not to be cancer anymore. They've done that in the lab. It's amazing research. Okay. And yes, they also can read signals. And if they have some sort of antenna, some sort of transmission medium, well, they're wireless, like Bluetooth. And then they can collectively form a swarm intelligence like a mesh network, and then they can communicate with an external sensor. You don't have to drill into the brain. You don't have to do any crazy stuff. You just basically get them in the right places, and they can sense their ambient environment and transmit that to you. It's harder. It takes 20, 30, 40 years. It's nanotechnology. But you have something with Synchron, which is good enough for the read side. And it's going to solve the problem of being able to see. It's going to solve the problem of being able to hear and solve the problem of being able to move remote stuff. Or you can just drill a hole in people's skulls and put in sensors and figure out how to create biocompatible materials and get every neurosurgeon on the planet on board with what you're doing and pretend the implants are going to last a long time when they're probably going to fall apart in 3 to 5 years because the brain is a caustic, acidic environment. What the fuck do I know? I'm the dropout. There we go. Finally, somebody's talking about duality. You should read about Russell Targ's work. He spoke at SAND, the Scientific Advancements in Non-Duality or something like that. But yeah, the consciousness may be a non-dual phenomena. It's the law of the excluded middle. We got that from Aristotle. Not necessarily true. Doesn't necessarily have to be just A or B. Everything is conscious. That's called panpsychism. What a nightmare. This is just horrible behavior. Yeah, who knows? Oh my God. Yeah, mirror life. That's real bad news. Bad news bears. What do you know about synthetic life made with chiral molecules? So DNA bends in a certain direction. You can actually make it go in the other direction if you want to. It's called a mirror life form. And the problem is that nothing in our world is that way. So we have no defense mechanism against it. We wouldn't recognize it. So mirror bacteria would kill us all. It's like the pre-antibiotics world. And also you have no immune system. So bad stuff. And guess what? They're working on it right now in a lab. The same people that forced COVID on you. And there's no consequences. Will your hospital be looking into researching spinal cord implants to help paralyzed people walk again? Oh, absolutely. We're looking into stem cells and these things. But it's going to be a long arc, so about 5 or 10 years down the road. So I'm right now interested in foundational science. And so I want to know how to get stem cells out of your body reliably and non-invasively. I want to learn how to culture expand them in a way where I can make them do whatever I want to do. Make them younger, make them more vibrant, make them differentiate in any tissue type I want. I want to learn how to inject them into you and make them go to the tissues I want them to go to. And I want to learn that once they go to those tissues, how to get them to do the things I want them to do in those tissues. Okay. So Xenobots, stem cells kind of are. They're like 70% of the way there. There's going to be a merger of those two things. You need programmability. And exosomes could be part of the story. Electrotaxis can be part of the story. So we're starting an electrome and an exosome program with the stem cell program. Now, once you've done all those things, one of the problems with spinal cord injuries is once it's cut, scar tissue forms. So even if you can regenerate the neurons, there's now a fibrous tissue that's a barrier between the stem cells, between the neurons, and they just can't touch each other. So you have to be able to dissolve that scar tissue. I'm going to do that in the lungs first. Ton of scar tissue in lung for mechanical ventilation issues, colds, other things. I have some scar tissue in my left lung. We're going to try to use stem cells to dissolve that. And there's paths to do this. And it's been done in animals. It can be done in humans. Once you start learning how to do that, then if you can program these things just the right way, you can get them in a targeted place and get them there. And over time, they can dissolve all that and rebuild the connecting tissue and restore those two parts together. And then you have function again. So absolutely, it's definitely possible. It just you have to do it in order. Everybody starts with the end, like let's restore your walking ability. And what they don't realize is that we're missing a lot of foundational stuff. And the reason why stem cells haven't taken off yet is it's like, well, I know how to make them and inject them, but they're standing around like, what do you want me to do? You built the computer, but you don't have a programming language. You need the programming language to write the program, and you have to know what the program needs to be in order for it to do what you want it to do. And that's what we're studying right now. We've already made some great progress in just getting foundational concerns set up. And then over time, eventually be able to make innovations with partners. What do you think umbilical cord bank can do for stem cell research? We do use umbilical cord artifacts, in particular UCB exosomes, because you can culture stem cells with exosomes. And if you have UCB exosomes, the chemical signals tell them to be younger. And you get a much better gene expression from it. How do you feel about peptides like BPC 157? There's some great stuff there in the peptide sciences. There's a course I'm going to take from this guy. I think it's Dr. Steele or something. It's 12 months long, and I'll know everything about peptides. But we want to use them, but it's just you have to be methodical about it. I've had a traumatic brain injury and I've recovered better than most. My speech and movement have been affected. Do you think that will recover? You're gonna have to push it a little bit. So my recommendation is do this. Let me go ahead and show you a little cool thing. So these guys are working on a headset, and this is the 4th generation of the technology. It's called the Vilite. So that little nasal thing there goes in. Guys, remember that famous picture of me where I'm wearing the headset and I got the little nose thing in? Everybody's like, my net worth is in this man's hands. This is the company, and they've been doing this for a while. It's an amazing device, and it has a whole bunch of studies behind it. They're using it for Parkinson's, for traumatic brain injuries, and they've published research with lots of different people. And there's a lot of really cool things that they've developed and they've been pushing through. And I'd highly, highly recommend taking a look at them. So should look at their website, take a look at the things that they have, but traumatic brain injury is one of the indications that they have for it. And they have some great papers here. The mechanism of action is photobiomodulation. So it actually shoots lasers, lights into your brain. How about that? The effects of transcranial plus intranasal photobiomodulation on cognitive function after repetitive head acceleration events. So a little rat, and they go damage the brain, and then they kill the rat and open up and take a look at the brain and see if it's healed. A lot of really cool stuff. Football injuries, and they did that with Harvard and Boston University. And right here, the Department of Veteran Affairs. Great company. So highly recommend you try that out. Use it for about 90 days and see what it does for you. Mechanism of action is the lasers go into the brain and activates the mitochondria inside the neurons, and they get supercharged. It's called photobiomodulation. And of course, chuckle.
LED scam! It's a scam! Ah!
What about this Harvard study? No, he should have the brain damage and just sit there with the brain damage. You should just be crippled forever. What about brain plasticity, where the brain will build new neuronal circuitry around the area the brain is damaged, usually during intense therapy? Yeah, absolutely. It works well. There's all kinds of things you can do to promote it: transcranial magnetic stimulation, direct electrical stimulation. You can do light therapies, photo entrainment, or auditory entrainment. That's like what Roxiva does, and the Neural Visor does. You can also do focused ultrasound as well. That's the latest and greatest. It's really cool stuff because you can get these beautiful three-dimensional targeting for it. Psychedelics can help too. And so it just depends on what's going on. Brain's a complicated organ. Are you doing research or know the research length in telomeres? That's old anti-aging stuff. It was like, oh, telomeres that are longer, somehow you live longer. There's a lot more to the story there, man. Our hyperbarics work will do it. It will replicate what the Aviv Clinic did. And we'll be able to showcase that with the study that we're doing. But there's a lot more there. You need there's many different hallmarks of aging. In fact, if you go to the website of our company, let me show you guys. We actually had a beautiful graphic constructed, and to show that aging is not one thing. So let me go to the hallmarks of aging. Here we go. So there's 12 hallmarks of aging that we have on the website, and I'll show you guys. So you look down and you have mitochondrial dysfunction. That's a huge one. This will kill you super fast. And photobiomodulation is what treats that. Genomic instability. And so telomere length attrition is an example of that, but there's many things that cause the instability. You have loss of proteostasis, so you're not making proteins appropriately, so that kills your body pretty quickly. Cellular senescence. So senescent cells accumulate as we age through cellular damage or the process of cellular division, releasing inflammatory cytokines that negatively impact other cells. Cellular senescence has been linked to diseases such as diabetes, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, and kidney disease. Altered intercellular communication. Cells use chemical signaling to communicate their current state and regulate homeostasis. As we age, our chemical signals change, which further accelerates aging. Deregulated nutrient sensing. Epigenetic alterations. This is what Dave Sinclair studies all the time at Harvard. Then you have telomere attrition. So that's what you're talking about. There's little caps at the ends of the chromosomes of these guys right here, these little caps. Then you have chronic inflammation, and you smoke, you drink. There are all kinds of things you can do. Inflammation causes the osteoarthritis, the atherosclerosis, degenerative disorders. Disabled microautophagy. Autophagy is a cellular recycling process where damaged cellular organelles and unused proteins are broken down and recycled into new organelles and proteins. As we age, our bodies lose the ability to recycle these cells. And that's a big one. When you fast, it actually improves autophagy. Dysbiosis. Bacteria in our gut, also known as the microbiome, help protect our overall health. Aging is associated with adverse changes in the gut microbiome. When you have all these bad buggies, they kill you. And stem cell exhaustion. Oof. Stem cells in our body, that's your entire regeneration and repair system, particularly following injuries. As we age, stem cells become exhausted, which combined with other cellular effects of aging and drastically reduce our ability to regenerate and repair. So you can take stem cells and give them exosomes, and you can kind of repair that. But isn't that cool? The 12 hallmarks of aging. So it's not one thing. It's a combination of interlocking things, and so far we've discovered 12 of them, and there's many subcategories in each and every one of them, and there's families of interventions for each of those things that you can do that overall reduces their impact. But you need to reduce all of them in order to live longer and have a longer health span. Do a lot of cool work. We work on a lot of cool things.
All this biotech and we still die at 79. All the pointless research. Ah.
Well, I'll tell you a story about a man who did not die at 79. He was an Italian man. He lived to 110. He was the last living Italian infantry member of World War One, and he had the most dangerous job in World War One. Let me go ahead and show you. Yes, here we go. And actually, he had a very, very difficult job here. An Italian army. And this will be our last guy. So, let's see here. All right, 1 second. Just got to check and make sure I have the right name, because you always have to check. Yes, he was the last. Ba-dum-bum-bum. It's always fun to look at these guys. All right. So some of the badasses of badasses are the Arditi. So if you're Italian, you'll know this term, but most people don't, because it's very, very old school. But I'll show you guys some cool pictures. And if you know about the Death Corps of Krieg, they were partially based on the trench fighting. Yeah, let me find the Arditi picture. I was just looking at this yesterday and I couldn't believe it. So I spent some serious time reading about them. Ah, that's the one I'm looking for. Okay, so let me go ahead and bring this up. I'll just open that in a new tab. Story time with Charles. Okay. Okay, we'll look at this other one. And we have our DT. Do. He died at 74. Okay. So one of the last World War I veterans to die was this wonderful guy named Ponticelli. And it just blows your mind how long this guy lived. So he was born December 24th, 1897, and died in 2008. So he died at basically 110. So he lied about his age in order to join the army, which is what most people did. Started in France and fought in Italy. And he would fight alongside the Arditi, as in these were the Arditi. And these guys were the baddest ass of badass warriors in Italian history. So the problem with trench warfare was that it was like a stalemate. You couldn't really advance, and no matter how many times they tried to use heavy artillery and like charge a trench, they could just get mowed down by heavy machine guns and other things. So the Germans invented a special type of trench warfare called stormtroopers, and basically these guys would, under the cover of darkness and typically following an artillery barrage, so artillery would blast and they creep up a little bit, and then they blast and creep up to hide the noise of them coming in. They would come into the trenches and use light machine guns, pistols, knives, and flamethrowers to try to break a hole in the trench to get behind the enemy line, so then they can utilize that hole to encircle the army and take it out. The stormtroopers were so effective that the Allied forces, the Italians and the British and the French, they started developing their own stormtrooper equivalents. So probably the craziest, most insane were the Arditi, where they just basically fought with knives. You know, they'd use pistols occasionally, but they would creep in under cover of darkness, as much armor as they could find. They were all trained knife fighters, and they go into the trenches and they would stab people and basically use grenades and knives to go and clear out the trenches. Now, the other thing that made this crazy was that the Germans dialed it up, and around 1917, they started using chemical weapons in the trenches. Actually, even earlier than that, but like it reached its nadir with mustard gas in 1917 and beyond. And the stormtroopers would come in with gas masks on, actually fighting in the trenches while the mustard gas was around them. These people were batshit insane, 90% casualty rate amongst all of them. This guy was adjacent to them, fought with them, and was around while this was going on. And he died at 110. So when you say we still die at 79, no, there are people who fought with dudes like this in trenches filled with mustard gas and chlorine gas under heavy artillery fire. And survive to tell the tale all the way to 2008. So this guy could have been in 2007 sitting at a restaurant with you. You're drinking coffee, and he could be telling you about the Great War. Imagine that. We have within our bodies, no matter what we do, the potential to live a really long time. And it's partly chemical. It's partly electrical. It's partly psychological. It's partly environmental. It's partly genetics. There's many different factors that go into all of these things. And no one thing is the dominant factor. It's a composition of all of these things. And if you know how to deal with that composition in just the right way, you can move first the health span. So it doesn't matter if you die at 79. You want to die in your sleep at 79. And the day before, you were out running around, having fun, swimming, banging beautiful women, having a great life. That's called health span. Then as technology evolves, the lifespan gets longer and longer and longer. And we go from 79 to 89 to 99 to 109, and your health span follows with it. So you're still just as juicy and vibrant every step of the way. And if you don't believe me, look at the naked mole rat. They live a good life for the most part in captivity. All right. So we learned a lot today, from World War I trench fighting to the audit to Bitcoin, DeFi, and everything between. This was a lot of fun. We have 21,000 people listening right now. It's pretty good, these Sunday AMAs. And I always had a lot of fun being with all you guys. And I really enjoy, sharing a few things with you from time to time. Easy peasy, lemon squeezy. Until next time, you now know the rest.